even for those on the rise, there's not an awful lot of cash in the boxing world. And if you're just starting out, well, it can be a very costly exercise indeed. But don't take my word for it. Here's the former European champion talkSPORT's Spencer Oliver.
You're turning professional and you're boxing, let's say, York Hall on a non-televised fight. You have to sell tickets to earn any money, but you have to cover the wages of your opponent as well. So if you don't have the ability to be able to sell enough tickets, you effectively have to pay to fight.
A far cry then from Jake Paul facing Mike Tyson in 2024, when the purse was reported to be around £48 million. But the vast amounts of cash lining the top dog's pockets isn't the norm in a typical fight.
Let's say you're lucky and you get between 5 and 10 grand. You're going to get 10 grand max for that. 10% goes to the trainer, 25% goes to the manager. Then we've got the tax man to pay as well. So we're cutting that money in at least half. So now you've got 5 grand for a 10-week camp. So you're talking about a guy here earning, he might be clearing 500 quid a week. How do you support a family on that? So boxers chase the dream. And, you know, there's probably 2% of them that actually make it.
So say you do make it and you start to rise up the ranks. Strikers Boxing, a training academy, says the mid-tier fighters can earn more, somewhere between £10,000 and £50,000 a fight, depending on record, profile, opponent and popularity of weight class. It's only at the top level does the real cash start flowing in, with the top-tier professionals, i.e. those going for titles, earning 6 figures a fight. Something else you'll have heard of is the terms prize fighter or journeyman. A prize fighter is, as it sounds, someone who picks up fights where they can and gets a nice big check if they win. Journeymen are the fighters who take on up-and-comers, effectively used for experience in the ring. Even if they're going up against a real prospect, a young Anthony Joshua, for example, these guys will be lucky to earn more than 10 grand. So the average boxer isn't as rich as you'd think.
Welcome to Danny Kelly's Trans-Europe Express. I'm Kevin Hatchard, sitting in for Danny tonight, and once again joined by the Morse to my Lewis, the Poirot to my Hastings, European football expert Andy Brassell. Lots to get through tonight. We'll talk about an incredible achievement by Paris Saint-Germain, but we'll also look at some pretty horrific scenes in the French capital that followed that success against Arsenal. We'll reflect on a sensational night for Crystal Palace as they lifted the Conference League in Leipzig. We'll review the seasons in Spain, France, Italy and Germany, and we'll take a rare look at how football's developing in Poland and at one club in particular. The Trans-Europe Express has left the station and you're all very welcome. Hi Andy, how are you? I can see you giggling away at the intro, which is always a good sign for me.
Happily shoveling coal.
Wonderful.
In our mutual benefit.
Yes, right. Bit of an old school reference. I thought I'd get a few references for the social media age in there. Bit of Poirot in there. Bit of Morse, no doubt about that. We are going to start with our poll, which we do every week. And it's very topical because, of course, the Champions League has just been claimed again by PSG. And we're asking you tonight, who's going to win the Champions League next season? Is it going to be PSG again? Is it going to be Arsenal? Is it going to be Bayern Munich? Or is it going to be somebody else? You can text us at 81089, or you can get in touch on all of our social media channels as well. So who's going to win the Champions League next season? Now we're going to start with some rather grim scenes overnight in Paris. There were once again violent clashes in the French capital, as there were after PSG won the Champions League last season. They came between hooligans and police. More than 200 people have been injured. There have been more than 750 arrests. Here to give us more details on this is the French football journalist Eric Bielderman. Eric, great to have you with us. Just for people who haven't heard or seen this, what exactly has been happening in Paris?
Good evening. In fact, I won't mention the word hooligans to tell the people involved in the riots. I would say thugs. I would say
absolutely. I didn't want to say fans. I didn't want people to have the idea that this was PSG fans, whereas what seems to be the case, or seems to be the allegation, is that a lot of these people involved in this are nothing to do with the club, not even fans of the club, just saw this opportunity.
Of course, some of them are having the Paris Saint-Germain jersey. Some of them can believe or can pretend to be Paris Saint-Germain fans. Most of them are the same guys than when Liverpool came to play the Champions League final in the Stade de France. They were attacking the Liverpool fans. They were attacking everybody who was coming to the game to steal them, to harass them. This is exactly the same kind of population. They do come to Paris just for the excuse of football, and whatever Paris Saint-Germain wins or Paris Saint-Germain lose, they have a good opportunity to put rampage, to try to destroy cars, motorbikes, bicycle, but also to attack the police with fireworks, heavy fireworks, and also try to attack shops or restaurants to steal what they can steal, like a sports shop or fashion shop or clothes shop. This is dreadful, and this is, unfortunately, every big games of Paris Saint-Germain, but not only Paris Saint-Germain, that kind of situation happens.
So, Eric, this was an escalation, I guess, of what happened after the final last year in Paris. We saw a couple of weeks back when PSG received the trophy for Ligue 1 on the final day of the season, strangely enough, across the road at the Jean Bouin, where Paris FC play, which felt like quite an underwhelming celebration before the game in front of the away end. Obviously, they went back and forth with the mairie to see how they could properly celebrate the Ligue 1 title. Was it the case that a few of the ideas that the club had that they wanted to celebrate, like the idea of going back to the Parc des Princes and all that sort of stuff when the game had finished, do you think the block was put on that because of these kind of scenes?
I think it was a good idea to make all in ones, to wait the celebration if, of course, Paris Saint-Germain was going to win the Champions League, to do it two in a row together. But the main point is that celebration to the away stadium, which was 100 yards from the home stadium, is the closest to football stadium, I think, in the world, to be so close to one to each other. Paris Football Club, the home team, didn't want for safety reason, but also just a kind of rivalry, newborn rivalry, to let few thousands Paris Saint-Germain fans to enter the field, because the stadium is not safe enough to organize something with thousands of Paris Saint-Germain fans. So they could have gone, but in terms of security, you can have a game in a small, tiny 20,000 stadium, and then to ask 45 or 50,000 to come to the main ground, to the Paris Saint-Germain ground, when you know that all around it will be once again a mess. So safety was the first priority.
Eric, you've already mentioned what happened after that Champions League final between Liverpool and Real Madrid. Awful scenes there. You've mentioned what happened last year, what's happened this year. What is all of this doing to the reputation of Paris as a sporting city in your eyes?
I would even say it's ruining Paris. It's ruining the suburb of Paris, and it's ruining main cities in France, because a lot of incidents did happen in Rennes, in Nantes, in Agen. You don't know, but Agen is a small, tiny 50,000 inhabitants where you cook foie gras, where you cook beautiful food. And there was rampage, and a policeman have been badly injured in this small town. It's the same kind of population who's coming to each occasion, but come back to Paris. Paris altogether is like the Great London area, is 15 million inhabitants. And when 15, 20, 30, 40,000 do come to Paris, these numbers I do give you is the number of thugs. So, 8,000 policemen who were involved in the security process all over Paris can resist to an invasion of dozens of thousands of people coming for dirty reasons. So the reputation, of course, is dreadful, and it's even more dreadful when you realize that a week ago, Lens won the French FA Cup to the Stade de France. The Stade de France is twice bigger than the Parc des Princes, more than 80,000. Lens came from the north of France with 55,000 fans. And then after the game, during the game, before the game, and the day after in Lens, a single incident, a real incident, was mentioned by the French authorities and the French police. So it means that you can have in Paris an event with French fans, French passionate of football, and it works. And then when it's about Paris Saint-Germain, mainly about Paris Saint-Germain, but it happens also when Algeria or Morocco or some other team, they do play the final of the African Cup, then celebration comes to Les Champs-Élysées or comes to Central District in Paris, and you can have, of course, it's not the same numbers of people, but it also happens that big incidents occur.
So what is the solution to this, Eric? Look, I know you're not a politician. It's a difficult question. No. But imagine we're here this time next year and PSG and Luis Enrique managed to copy Zinedine Zidane and Real Madrid and make it 3 Champions Leagues in a row. What would be your suggestion? Are we talking about the idea of having something self-contained? Because you already had a watch party at the park last night. So it doesn't feel to me like this would work. I mean, it's almost not football's problem, really, is it? Even if you could argue it's provoked by football.
Exactly. You know, at the moment in the Parc des Princes, the French, the players are arriving to celebrate once again in the Parc des Princes. I see on TV the show. It's a beautiful show. The fans and the players, they're really enjoying themselves. But outside of the Parc des Princes, we know that there is some small incident so far, but we fear that after this celebration at the moment, the thugs will come back again around the Parc des Princes. So what is the solution? There is no solution because it's not a problem of football. It's a problem of society. It's a problem of integration. It's a problem of justice. It's a problem of police. What do the police say for years? And it's something not connected to football and not connected to Paris Saint-Germain, but connected to when you do arrest someone, whatever he does, the risk of him to go to jail and the risk of him to have harsh treatment like you did 20, 30, 40 years ago in England with the hooligans. We can talk about hooligans when we come back to the English situation 40 years ago. The justice was responding, and when you decided to treat for good the problem of violence in football, you managed to do it. At the moment, whatever it is in football or it is outside of football, the police says, we do arrest the guys, and the morning after the guy is free, he comes back to us and he laughs at us in front of our whole face. So what can we do except sometimes to close our eyes because we are tired about it?
Yeah, it's an incredibly difficult situation, Eric, as you've outlined there. And I guess you throw forward a few weeks, potentially. France have got an incredibly strong squad. There's every chance that they'll go quite deep in this World Cup. Do you think this will spark fears that we could be having exactly the same conversation in just a few weeks' time?
Yes, Yes, we will have. We will have. Maybe not for the first few games when we play Senegal, where we play Norway, but if we come to the knockout phase, of course, there will be celebration. I don't think it will be exactly the same volatile and numerous of people acting negatively, because also it will be summertime, and in summertime, on summertimes of people, even the thugs, they go on a vacation, they go away from Paris, so it's something a bit different. But I do fear a quarter-final, a semi-final, and if so, the final, whatever we go to the final, we win it or we lose it, there will be for sure the same kind of problem that we do have had yesterday, and maybe we're going to have in a couple of hours again in Paris.
And let's hope not. A great insight there from Eric Bielderman on that unrest in Paris, and he makes a very good point. It's very easy to say that it's football's problem. It's very easy to say fans, whereas actually the truth of it is probably that a lot of the people involved are not actually anything to do with supporting PSG and anything to do with football. Coming up after the break on Trans-Europe Express, we'll focus on what happened on the pitch when Paris Saint-Germain won the Champions League.
Edwin, away from Soccer Aid, obviously a good second half of the season for your former club, Manchester United. It feels like a no-brainer to give Michael Carrick the job on a full-time basis. I guess the big question is, what can he achieve next season? How close to being championship contenders do you see them being?
Yeah, but I think what Michael brought was stability, clarity. Got some players in, played a lot of times the same team, and formation that was recognizable for the fans. And I think the performance that he put on, the results that he got, and that the board and the directors take their time to look at our options, see how things develop, see how the players look like. Probably they got some contact with Bruno and some established players to make up their mind. And very happy for Michael that he got the opportunity to do it on a permanent basis.
What about Michael Carrick's big selections this summer? What has he got to do in order to make them more competitive next season in terms of winning the Premier League? Because that's the established aim for Manchester United.
Yeah, of course. I'm not that deep into Manchester United. And of course, some players will have a desire to leave or to extend the contract.
Tonight, the best attack in the competition comes up against much the best defence. Imperious against impervious. And Kai Havertz will drop deep and play the ball out to the left where it's worked for. It comes off Trossard and breaks Havertz's way. Big early chance. His ranging stride takes him inside the penalty area and he strikes it into the top right-hand corner. It's 1-0 to the Arsenal. Has that refrain ever had a sweeter sound? Kvaratskhelia taking it on the half turn on the edge of the penalty area. Lovely little 1-2. It's gone down inside the penalty area. And the referee has given a penalty to Paris Saint-Germain. It's Ousmane Dembele that will step forward and take it. Penalty save now. David Raya's had the season of his life. Can he conjure it up? No, he can't. It's driven in past him into the bottom left-hand corner. And it's 1-1 between PSG and Arsenal. And they've got it to penalties. It's a nervy-looking run-up from Gabriel. Left-footed. He's missed it. He's missed the target. He's blazed it over the bar. Paris Saint-Germain celebrate back-to-back Champions League titles.
Yes, PSG are the kings of Europe for the second season running after their penalty shootout win over Arsenal in the Champions League final. Our reporter and Trans-Europe Express family member Lee Davey was in the stadium in Budapest following his beloved PSG. Lee, great to have you with us. Just give us a flavour of what the atmosphere was like for a start.
Hello, gents. Thanks for having me on. It was incredible. It really, really was. And the atmosphere was great, not just from PSG fan perspective. Arsenal fans really brought the noise as well. It was such an incredible spectacle, and it was a real pleasure to be there. And, you know, look, Arsenal were... It's always cruel, isn't it, to lose on penalties that way? But somebody has to. And, you know, just to be there and just to experience it was, you know, it was just an incredible feeling, especially for being a PSG fan. I missed Munich last year. I wasn't well, unfortunately, and I couldn't go, but the footballing gods didn't stop me this time. So it was just wonderful, really wonderful, certainly from my point of view.
And it was really interesting how the game went tactically, I thought, because Arsenal made that perfect start. We know how good they are once they get their noses in front. And for a good hour or so, they really kept PSG at arm's length. But against a team like that, it's so difficult to be picture perfect all the way through. And that's kind of what you have to be if you're going to keep a clean sheet against Paris. Yeah, and I think we can't just hear from Andy there. So, Lee, just back to you. You talked about that atmosphere.
Yeah, I'm here.
There was the early goal from Kai Havertz. So, obviously, that was a massive blow for PSG. How did that feel when that early goal went in?
Well, not good, because anybody who's watched Arsenal knows that you go a goal down to Arsenal, it is incredibly difficult to get yourself back into the game. And I was fearing the worst. You know, the clock was ticking down, Kevin. I'm thinking, right, try and get back into this game before half-time. Have to try and find a way. And Arsenal defended incredibly well. And what I thought they did really well is the way that they just crowded that midfield out and took Vitinha. Everything that Vitinha does is passing, his movement in midfield. He was thwarted so well, and you could just see just how well drilled that Arsenal midfield is positionally. Luis Enrique said in the week that they're the best team in the world off the ball, and they really showed that in the first half. So when PSG did get back into the game, I think it was the 65th minute through Dembele, it kind of felt that it was going to be a set piece, or it was going to be a penalty or something like that was going to get them back into the game, because actually PSG weren't creating a whole lot, particularly in that first half.
Yeah, Andy, it is really fascinating because the debate has been Mikel Arteta was maybe too defence-minded, but against this Paris team, you don't always have a choice. And there aren't many teams that can actually defend as well against them as they did. You look at Chelsea, they were shredded over the two legs. You look at Liverpool, they were beaten home and away. Bayern ended up conceding 5 in the first leg. You know, you can't really go toe-to-toe with this team. And if you are the best defensive side in the world, which Arsenal probably are, you're going to lean into that, right?
Yeah, why wouldn't they? I mean, like, people looking down their noses at the way they played, it's just ridiculous, really. Honestly, I thought Arsenal made it really, really difficult for them. They were excellent for pretty much all of it, really, and did as much as they could have done. If anything, I wonder if they could have backed themselves a little bit more in that sense, and Mikel Arteta could have backed them a little bit more, because I can sort of see where they were coming from when they made their substitutions, especially in the wake of the equaliser. There was a sense of, right, let's give them something else to think about. And Madueke was causing Nuno Mendes a few problems as well, which I thought it was quite interesting. Like people talking about how Safanov's kick-in went really off-key. He was doing exactly the same as he did in the semi-final against, deliberately knocking it out to flood that side of the pitch as they did to Michael Olise. If you're Noni Madueke, that's as good as compliments get, I would say. So I just wonder that bit where Arsenal, the only time they really looked vulnerable, I thought, was probably the last 15, 20 minutes when they decided, okay, we're going to try and have a bit more of a go. Not that it necessarily produced a lot of opportunities or a lot of clear-cut opportunities, especially outside set pieces. But really, I think doing that when Bradley Barcola had come on, I mean, no one would suggest he's better than Kvisha Kvaratskhelia, but that could have cost them the game, actually.
Well, he's quicker, isn't he? That's the thing, and his pace was huge. It gave him two big chances, didn't it, that he wasn't quite able to take.
And if he's more clinical, which obviously Barcola isn't, then that would have been, if you had Barcola's pace stuck to Kvaratskhelia, it would have been different. It wouldn't have gone to extra time in the first place. So, look, I have no complaints with the way that Arsenal played, and I think the big thing to look at, though, and interesting to put this to Lee, because I think PSG have evolved gradually. I think over these 3 years of Luis Enrique, and it's always framed as before Mbappe and after Mbappe went, which I think is the laziest way of putting it, because really, apart from, a very, very unlucky couple of semi-final legs, they would have been in the final in his first year as well, wouldn't they? Because, they should have beaten Dortmund over those two legs quite comfortably. And, that doesn't really fit with the Mbappe narrative, does it? but look, I think Luis Enrique, Lee, and Mikel Arteta are actually quite comparable, even if they're at different stages in their career. And I just think that Arsenal won't play the same way next year, and they won't play the same way the year after that. Tell us a bit about your view on that and how you think Luis Enrique has evolved since he's been in Paris.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. Look, Luis Enrique has done a wonderful job. It's 3 seasons in a row now. He's played every Champions League match but one, and which you alluded to, which was the 2024 final. Incredible. I mean, that's incredible by anyone's standards. I think what's most impressive about him is he came in, he's reshaped the identity of the club. He's came in, he's took full control. Nobody's ever had that under the QSI era. Nobody. They've given him the keys to that.
Isn't it, Lee? That's the massive difference, right? Because Luis Enrique's done an amazing job, as you say, but that change to giving him full authority when no other coach had that prior to him, that's just opened the door. He's then done everything since then, but that's just opened the door for him to be successful, right?
Absolutely. I mean, he came in. It's one of football's hardest tasks is getting this PSG team over the line, and it took him 2 seasons to do so. He's done it with identity. He's done it with clarity. He's done it with belief in his system and what he does, and what he doesn't deviate away from his what his philosophy is in any way, shape, or form. He's not come in to fit the system. He's changed the system. And don't forget, he had some huge decisions to make in them early couple of weeks. Offloading Neymar, huge earner, huge ego, huge player, global star. He said, "No thanks. You're not gonna play for me." Then he did the same to the darling of Paris Saint-Germain, Marco Verratti. 2 huge names out the door. And you, as a fan, you're sitting there, you're thinking, well, what's this PSG team going to look like? And there was, you'll go back to that first season, that 4-1 thrashing at St. James's Park, and you're thinking, what direction is this club going in? And then things just started to click, and things started to go in the right direction. And we've never looked back, really. It's just been absolutely incredible. It's a ride that you never want to get off. And it's not going to last forever. But as right now, as it stands, it's just, last night I was in the stadium and there was people around me crying, men, women, children. One guy came up to me, he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "C'est pas normal, c'est pas normal." And I stopped for a second, I thought, it's not normal. It's not normal going back to back in this competition. 9 teams have done it, and only one since the rebranding of the Champions League in '93, Real Madrid, have been able to do this. what he's done is absolutely staggering. And, you know, you wouldn't bet against them being at the latter stages next season. And also, Mikel Arteta's Arsenal as well. I can see that these teams are going to meet again and again and again. And I don't think either team's going anywhere for a while.
Yeah, it could be a fascinating rivalry that develops over the next few seasons. Great to be joined by Lee Davey. You can check out his articles, by the way, on talksport.com. Well worth a look. Coming up after the break, we're going to start our season review section. We're going to take a look at what happened in Liga.
As I've been waiting to come on, I've just had a message from somebody called Gabriel Agbonlahor. I'm not quite sure who he is, but his message was replying to me writing a diary in the Spectator magazine this week, which is headline, "No one likes Arsenal, we don't care." And he's just said, "I pray for a PSG win." Think about that sentence. That is a talkSPORT presenter on his knees praying to God that Arsenal an English team, do not win the Champions League. That is how pathetic the Arsenal haters have got. It is pathetic.
I want to ask you about that, Pierre, and I'm deadly serious, right? I'm deadly serious, right? I remember West Ham getting that Conference League final. Just about the whole country was behind them. Certainly Palace last week. Everybody was behind them. Why? What is it with Arsenal?
I just cannot understand how any fan base that has me, Keir Starmer, Jeremy Corbyn, the president of Rwanda.
You've answered that.
And I haven't finished yet. And the late Osama bin Laden. Why that fan base would be so detested, I have no idea. No, you know what it is? It's we live in a country I like this about our country, but it's tall poppy syndrome, right? When we were losing and choking, everybody loved Arsenal, right? For the last 22 years, there's nothing other football fans have enjoyed more or loved more or celebrated more than our repeated choking and failures. And now we've actually climbed the summit. Now we've become Premier League champions again.
talkSPORT Breakfast returns tomorrow from 6 a.m. as Jeff Stelling and Dean Saunders are joined by a host of guests as they look back on a gigantic weekend which saw Arsenal lose in the Champions League final to PSG on penalties. That's the talkSPORT Breakfast show tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. Do not miss it. Now we're going to be reviewing the seasons in the big leagues tonight. We're going to start with Liga. And Andy, I guess the first topic really is what was a much closer title race than we expected between PSG and a Lens team that wasn't really supposed to be anywhere near the title.
No, and it's a little bit like the Premier League title race in the end. The finishing point gap really doesn't truly express how close the race was, and even closer in France. 6 points in the end between PSG and Lens, but it was much tighter than that. Now, Lens, bear in mind that you go back to when Will Still was there, and you thought with the fact that he was losing players left and right during the season, you look at Kuzanov, for example, one of their big sales. They lost some huge players, and you thought he did quite well to finish 8th. And then Pierre Sage comes in and goes, okay, hold my beer. I'm going to show you how it's really done. Unfairly sacked from Lyon by John Textor. And with that budget...
Everybody's favourite football genius.
I try not to mention him, but sometimes
I know. I can hear the hurt. When you say John Textor, I can hear the hurt in the voice.
Well, I think it's interesting when you look at who Pierre Sage is being linked with nowadays. Really big jobs. You know, Pierre Sage was a guy who came from Lyon, loves Lyon, got his first pro chance there. They'd never be able to get him now because he's gone up so many levels. Now, of course, it comes down to a rookie sporting director as well, Jean-Louis Leca, their former goalkeeper as well, who recruited really, really well, both in and out of season. They had Florian Thauvin at the start of the season, then Alain Saint-Maximin mid-season. And I think that must be why Pierre Sage is appealing to loads of big clubs as well, because it's not just him moulding kids, which we knew he could do from the Lyon Academy. It's the fact that he can command the respect of guys who've been there, done it, and in some cases thrown their toys out the pram at 1 or 2 clubs as well. And that he's moulded that in to a team and a squad that is just so impressive. And of course, with the atmosphere of the Bollard, there'll be a brilliant welcome back to the Champions League next season.
And they won the Coupe de France as well, which is a huge
for the first time ever
for them, and and an incredible celebration as well, as they went back at 4 a.m. in the morning afterwards to celebrate. Just a quick one on this title race, because Lens did well to really push it all the way. But has that papered over a few cracks in the sense that Liga has a similar problem to the Bundesliga, doesn't it, really? That one team absolutely dominates the rest and can only really be in a title race if they're off it a bit.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And it is always a case of resource, really. You look at what Paris Saint-Germain have, and I think if you look at it going forward, what Paris Saint-Germain are becoming better and better at is bringing players from their academy into the first team, not bringing players from their academy into the professional world and selling them elsewhere. But, you know, you look at some of the players that have come through and are continuing to come through. Of course, there'll be a couple who escape, like Ibrahim Mbaye. Looks like he'll leave this summer. But someone like Warren Zaire-Emery, for example, there just wasn't the pathway if you're going back 3 or 4 years for players like that, even exceptional talents like that in many cases. So I tend to think with the schedule, I think Ligue 1's clubs, or Ligue 1's bigger clubs, not Lens, of course, they're blameless, have really missed an opportunity this season to properly make a go of it. And they've dropped the ball. Because if you think of the fact that PSG have played, as Lee was saying, like pretty much every game over the last 3 years. And Luis Enrique was being interviewed on Spanish TV last night, and the interviewer asked him, what next? And he went, 2 months of holiday!
Yeah. Much needed and much deserved.
Yeah, he chucked away the microphone and off he went. and you can't blame him. But really, with that, and with the ability to go out and spend in the transfer market, I don't think it's dystopian or unreasonable to go that, you know, PSG are winning it by double digits next season.
Yeah.
Already.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. If you look at the rest of the Champions League picture, Lyon will have to qualify, but they did make it into the top 4. Lille have made it straight through, and they've got a very exciting choice as their next coach.
Exciting, interesting, you know, something around there.
I like it. So Davide Ancelotti's getting the job, and I like it. I think this could be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're massive boots to fill in Bruno Genesio, who couldn't agree a new contract, who looks like he'll be going to Marseille. And, he's a much better coach than people give him credit for. Great developer of players. Players really respect him. He's done a great job at Lyon and Rennes before, and then he's got Lille into the Champions League twice, which is really, really impressive. So Davide Ancelotti has just had a little spell in charge of Botafogo. Now, look, he's been learning off the best. His dad, whose staff he's been on for a while, he really impressed people in Brazil with the way that he nailed Portuguese in double quick time. And he's a really, really good communicator, polyglot. I think that's important as well. But it's a bit of a steep climb, I think, because, look, he's going to have so little time to actually get his ideas across on the training ground. Once you get into September, like, it's all going to be, watching like training videos and instructional videos on laptops and tablets and phones on the coach. And I think that's quite difficult for a new coach.
Marseille, you mentioned, they and Monaco had an absolute nightmare. That's the truth of it. I know that Monaco did respond at one stage under Sebastian Pocognoli, but it was interesting to me that they got rid of Adi Hutter when they did, because I felt that was a massive mistake. And he's now back in German football with Eintracht Frankfurt. Marseille, I mean, we could do a whole 3 hours on Marseille, Andy. What a mess. From start to finish. From the very, very start of the season when Rabiot and Jonathan Rowe, put the gloves up in the dressing room and both get sold. And it just spiralled from there.
The weird thing is they recovered from that. And they looked like title outsiders in October, November, and then when it went wrong, it went really wrong. It kind of makes you think about Roberto De Zerbi, doesn't it? Look, I think next season will be a really good one for Tottenham, but a part of that is that there won't be any European football, and De Zerbi is yet to prove himself really in the European arena, despite having had a bit of it with Shakhtar, not very successfully, Brighton and now Marseille.
Because they blew it big time, didn't they? That's the truth of it.
They did, and you have to look at it and think, like, even for Marseille, he's intense, so you get really great football for a bit, and then you get a few aches and pains, and he's maybe not that forgiving. I think the arm around the shoulder, De Zerbi, maybe that shows he's changed, or maybe that shows that he was coming into a very particular situation at Tottenham. But that made it really difficult for Marseille. Abi Bey was an extraordinary choice, really, when you consider
supply teacher energy.
Oh, well, yeah, but of course he's someone who's hugely experienced. He's an interesting guy. He initially did pretty well at Rennes before the wheels fell off really badly. But the fact that he managed to drive Rennes out of Champions League contention and then went and did the same at Marseille is just unbelievable, really. I know he's got history at Marseille, but still, he knows the club is not always the answer, is it? And of course, you had the madhouse upstairs with the change of president, with Mehdi Benatia leaving as sporting director and then coming back and now leaving again. And they're going to have to make some massive budget cuts this summer as well, because they're sailing very, very close to the FFP wind.
Well done to Nice, who just about stayed up. They managed to beat Saint-Etienne in the relegation playoffs, so Nice will be in Liga next season. Andy, who's your star of the season in Liga?
Esteban Lapoule, of course, came through the Lyon Academy, booted to the curb, ended up coming back through regional football, couldn't get in the Angers team when he initially went there, and then after a good season in Ligue 1, got a move to Rennes. Now he's the top scorer in the league. And, his late father was a good player, and he would be so proud of what a hard worker as well as what a skilled player his son is.
Yeah, mine is Olivier Pontaloni. He was the coach of Lorient, took Lorient to a 10th placed finish, which is really quite remarkable. They were newly promoted at the start of the season, and they really dithered Lorient about whether he was going to be the guy. They thought, is he just a promotion guy? Should we keep him on? They did keep him on. He did a brilliant job. And after more dithering, he eventually has left the club. And I think a few of the players since have said that they feel that is the wrong decision. So Olivier Pontaloni is my star of the season for Liga. Coming up after the break, we're going to look back on all matters Bundesliga.
Big week, big week, big week.
Come on.
Big week.
Can I get congratulations?
Happy for you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Do you know how pathetic this is? You got a Tottenham fan sort of celebrating. You can't celebrate. You come in
straight in. Bro, at least like maybe a cup of tea first. Like, go straight in.
No, mate, because your entire gait and approach is wrong. This is unjust. This isn't how it works. Darren sitting next to me, giving it the big one, is just about fair enough. They're champions. They can get away with it. You can't come in here as a Tottenham fan and celebrate. You've got to celebrate.
You're smiling. Where did you finish?
What did you celebrate?
Where did you finish?
I'm not celebrating.
Where did you finish?
No, we finished mid-table.
I'll put something to you. We had the same season as you.
I kind of agree with that. I just think it's crazy that you came in here. You came in here like the cat that got the cream.
No.
This is the thing.
I think what people are confused about. No one celebrated finishing 17th. We celebrated the fact that we're not going to be in the championship. You don't get that. What don't you get about that? No one wants to be 17th, but once we're in a relegation fight, you want me to be upset that we're staying up, bro? I'm happy, bro.
I think it's shameful that you can find anything to celebrate at the moment. And this is the thing that Tottenham fans are doing. They're sort of going, we kind of won. We won. We succeeded. We made it. Like, no, you lost. The fact that we're having this conversation. We're having this conversation.
He's coming in for a different level of smoke.
Yeah, he has.
I had an ice cream earlier.
He has. No, literally, I was enjoying the weather. Yeah, he's coming in on war, like,
honestly,
crazy.
I just can't believe it. I've witnessed you in real life. You've walked through the door like the cat.
You want me to come in here? It's 30 degrees outside. How do you want me to walk in?
I think you should come in here very reticent and basically say, "Oh my God, by the skin of our teeth, we got away."
Bro, you know I don't play for Spurs, right? You know that. I got my whole own thing going on.
No, I don't really get it. But what I do have to do is give a lot of credit to Roberto De Zerbi.
Yeah, fair enough. He done his job. He done well.
He changed his direction.
That was the last swing of the bat, innit? Like getting De Zerbi in, and he done his job.
Yeah. Do you think you would have gone down without him?
Yeah, probably. I think so. Probably. He galvanised everyone. I think he just brought everyone together, and people bought into him, which is important.
Get ready to get the ultimate football fan winning feeling with talkSPORT Win.
This Monday at 4 p.m, somebody is winning the trip of a lifetime to the 2026 FIFA World Cup in Dallas. talkSPORT and Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier, are sending you and a friend to see England's opening game against Croatia on June the 17th. We're talking return flights, accommodation, spending money, tickets, and the official Adidas match ball, the Trionda, all covered. Ready to get that winning feeling? Well, here is how to enter. For your chance to win, head to talksportwin.com or text WIN to 83338. Texts and online entries cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate, or you can call 0343 418 7260. Entries must be in by 4 p.m. on Monday. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a TalkSPORT promotion. Full T's and C's at talksportwin.com. So for your chance to win, text WIN to 83338 now. So let's take a look back at the Bundesliga season. And Andy, this was one of the most dominant Bayern teams that I can remember. I've been covering the league a long, long time now. It ages me horribly, the amount of time I've been covering the Bundesliga. I think it's genuinely one of the most thrilling and one of the most impressive Bayern teams I've ever seen.
Yeah, they were. And what I thought was really funny at the end of the season, where there was a public sense of they're really quite likable. Various fans of other clubs going, well, they're not that likable. I don't want them to win or anything like that. Let's put it in some sort of perspective. But look, I think Vincent Kompany's had a huge effect on the way that Bayern are perceived. You know, a club that was really about drama, about strutting like peacocks. They're brilliant to watch, but there's not that same level of self-absorption as there has been in previous Bayern teams.
Yeah.
And
they're not FC Hollywood anymore, are they?
No, they're not. And for a coach to come in, especially one who wasn't first choice for the job, to come in and make that difference, I think is pretty amazing. I think of all Kompany's qualities, his human qualities are undoubtedly the outstanding ones. But I think you have to say on on a technical and tactical level, they've been so great to watch. Pretty close to the treble, not quite there, but pretty close, breaking all the goal scoring records, including the Bundesliga goal scoring record, which they beat easily.
They smashed it. They absolutely smashed it.
And the remarkable thing about that, Kev, is obviously from an English perspective, a lot of people look at that and go, "Oh, well, Harry Kane filling his boots every week," and of course he did have a great season. But actually not a huge proportion of the goals. Like if you look at, say, the proportion of Guirassi's goals, how many of Guirassi's goals counted as a proportion of Dortmund's or Undav for Stuttgart or something, everyone chipped in. Most of all, Michael Elise, who I noticed, Kev, was voted in Kicker's secret survey as the best player in the league by his fellow pros.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. Kane takes the headlines with 61 goals in all competitions. But for me, if there was a Champions League final tomorrow and Bayern were in it, and you said, who's the player they cannot be without, I'd actually say Elise over Kane. Not by much, but I think I would, because
agree.
I think they find a way somehow to mitigate Kane not being there. Not replace him, but mitigate it. Elise, I think, is irreplaceable for them. And that's why Uli Hoeneß has been so clear that he's not for sale this summer. Whether it's Liverpool, whether it's Real Madrid, he is not going anywhere.
Kev, I want to pop you on the spot here actually a second.
Go on then.
It's got to be one of the most difficult jobs in football, backing up Harry Kane, because no one who's elite level really wants to do it because you're not going to play. That is changing a little bit because Kompany rotated him quite heavily towards the end of this season particularly. So Nicholas Jackson got his games. Is there anyone who springs to mind? Obviously now Nicholas Jackson's going back to Chelsea, who might be someone who you could see doing that job.
I think what's really interesting actually is the fact that they were so heavily linked with Anthony Gordon, because I think the way they may approach it is to bring in somebody who can cover multiple positions. Yes. Because I think they want somebody to back up Diaz on that left-hand side, but also if they can play centre forward, then great. And I think that's probably the way they'll look at it. Obviously, they can't get Gordon now, but somebody like that, and maybe even a player like, not specifically him, but a player like a Maxi Bayer, somebody who's a guy that can play wide, can play through the middle, is going to do a job, is going to accept that they're not going to be in that starting 11 all the time, but they can be a pretty good member of that side. I think when Serge Gnabry's back fit, he was great in the 10 for them, but that might be his role in the end. He might end up being Mr. Fix-It. So when there is a gap that needs filling, he's the man to do that. So I think they will fill that role. I think Jackson did fine. He's come away from it having won a double. It's worked out for him. It's kept his profile high. And I think it'll work out for him in the long run. Dortmund, I think we can cover off pretty quickly, Andy, because I find them interesting in the sense that they were second, they were best of the rest by quite some distance. Niko Kovac designed the best defence in the division, but they were nowhere near Bayern. And I can't see them getting anywhere near Bayern anytime soon. And Niko Kovac seems kind of comfortable with that. As long as they are second and qualify for the Champions League each and every season, he's okay with that. I do want to talk about Leverkusen, though, because at the time we record, they're scrabbling around looking for a coach. They've been interested in Glasner. They've been interested in Felipe Luis. They've been interested in Andoni Iraola, it looks as though he's going to go to Liverpool. And Erik ten Hag was a disaster at the start. Kasper Hjulmand never really got them where they wanted to be, and that was Champions League qualification.
No, I mean, it was funny because I think so much of what Kasper Hjulmand did was really quite good in the circumstances. Bear in mind that he takes over from Erik ten Hag after 3 competitive games, 2 in the league, and like with the transfer window pretty much shut, and a completely new set of players after 300 million euros worth of sales. It's like, okay, make us some magic in the vein of Xabi Alonso, which is so difficult. And I think up until Christmas, he did really well. But when you get to 2026, the performances are way worse than the results, and the results aren't great. And you know, they're absolutely hammered by Bayern in the semi-finals of the DFB Pokal. Yeah. They get themselves right up into the top 4 with 2 games to go, and then they blow it again almost immediately. And it's going to take something new. I think this is developing into a mini problem for them, I think, Kev, because, as you say, they've got loads of guys of stock who are interested, but none of them have been interested enough to say yes yet. Yeah. And because they need a proper reshaping, they need that lockdown ASAP. You know, if you look at the club structurally, it's so well set up, it's so well organised, but they just need that right coach.
Wolfsburg were relegated, which was truly extraordinary given their wage bill. Paderborn have replaced them in the Bundesliga for next season. Andy, who's your star of the season in Germany?
My star of the season is Said Al-Mala of FC Köln, a player who might end up in the Bundesliga, in the Premier League even, next season. 13 goals and 4 assists as a teenager, with a coach that, in Lucas Krasniok, who didn't really believe in him for most of the season, and could have been a bit nicer to him in public, I think.
Could have been a bit nicer to everybody, to be honest.
Yeah, sure. Julian Nagelsmann as well, I think, like, the way he handled El-Mala wasn't great either. And El-Mala just got on with it. You know, he's fantastic to watch. And he's like this lovely midway point between someone who can be a high-class winger, who can hug the touchline and dribble around people, and someone who can come inside and score goals. So, you know, amazing for him to do what he did with a relative lack of support and with the fact that he'd never played in the Bundesliga before.
My star of the season, very similar actually, a young winger, Jan Diamande, who got 12 goals and 8 assists in the Bundesliga at the age of 19. You're listening to Trans-Europe Express.
Look, he was on stage last night. It was quite an emotional sort of admission, really. He said that after Brighton, I think in week 10, I came off the stage, and the incident in Manchester where he had the argument with Jan van Veen, I was sat at home and I was saying to Faith, I don't want to do it anymore. Just the crowd every week. I said to her, I'm down bad. Now, listen, he was probably out of order to do the crybaby emoji or whatever it was he was doing to Van Veen, and he got a little bit of stick for that. But did we go, as a general public, did we protect him enough? We have to remember that he's 19 years of age. And bearing in mind the way he was talking there about his mental health, and bearing in mind we had a conversation last hour about Ricky Hatton and how, we deal with these situations. Do we have to be a little bit careful with him?
We definitely have to be, because we forget he's only 19. I mean, for me, I've got a 17-year-old. He's 18 in a few weeks. They're still learning about life. They've got so much to learn. They're kids. His mistakes that he's probably made, doing the crying faces, he's going to make more mistakes. He's a 19-year-old boy. Like grown men are in a crowd booing him, hurling abuse. Do you know what I mean? I played with loads of players that in training, they were fantastic players. On a game day, they couldn't handle the effect of the crowd. And I could.
So do you think there was players that played in your dressing room
100%
that were equally as talented and gifted, maybe better than some of those that were in the team, but they couldn't deal with the expectations?
They couldn't deal with the...
More green jackets have been lost at the 12th than at the Augusta City Dry Cleaners. Rory McIlroy knows this better than most. But what is Amen Corner, and why is it so iconic? The famous sequence has always been there since the Masters began in 1934. It didn't get its name until '58, though, when American sports writer Herbert Warren Wind, on the left, wrote, "At the farthest reach of the Augusta National Course, down in the Amen Corner." He drew inspiration from the 1933 jazz song Shouting in That Amen Corner by the Dorsey Brothers. The reason behind its difficulty is all in the sand and the water. Tournament officials don't even bother to count the balls lost in there each year, such is the sheer number. The 11th, named White Dogwood, is a downhill 520-yard par 4 with a pond to the left of the green and a bunker to the right. Both cause a lot of trouble each year. The 12th, Golden Bell, is perhaps the most famous hole in the world, with danger everywhere. Many aim for the flag, but look, get it even slightly wrong and you're in the azaleas at the back, or the bunkers at the front, or even worse, Rays Creek. Or you can play it safe and aim for the open green on the left. You chicken. Tiger Woods once said, if you make 4 bogeys from Thursday to Sunday, you're doing well. And the highest ever score on that hole? 13. It's a par 3. Tom Weiskopf in 1980 was the sorry soul. Often the iconic Ben Hogan Bridge is the only thing players enjoy about Golden Bell. Even if you escape there unscathed, though, you met with Azalea, the dogleg par 5 13th. It tempts players to go for the green in 2, but cut over those trees on the left at your peril. Every year, it seems, Amen Corner destroys someone's dreams. Rory McIlroy dropped 3 shots through here as his round unravelled in 2011. In 2016, a year after navigating Amen Corner expertly, Jordan Spieth shot a quadruple bogey on the 12th to throw away his green jacket. I mean, it sounds like my game, to be honest. So who'll be the next to be brought to their knees, praying for mercy after Amen Corner?
You're listening to Danny Kelly's Trans-Europe Express. I'm Kevin Hatchard, sitting in for Danny tonight. I'm alongside the European football supercomputer that is Andy Brassell. Coming up in the next hour, we'll bring you the latest from South America. We'll look at what the future holds for Kylian Mbappe at Real Madrid, and we'll review the La Liga and Serie A seasons. It's all coming up on Trans-Europe Express. Well, earlier on, I spoke to our South American expert, Tim Vickery, about lots of different subjects, and we started with a bit of Neymar Watch. Tim, we always like to discuss Neymar. Neymar Watch has become an unofficial part of the show, and he's picked up this injury, and I guess this was always going to be the concern, the physical aspect of his inclusion in Brazil's World Cup squad, because he has been struggling physically for quite some time.
Well, what an extraordinary story. And Ancelotti, when he called him up, I did say he was bringing the circus inside the dressing room, and blimey, what a circus it's been. Now, he was called up nearly 2 weeks ago on the Monday. He'd picked up a knock the day before, and he'd been substituted. The line from his club, from Santos, at that point was that he just had a swollen ankle. There's no problem at all. He could have played, said Santos, in their game in the Europa League equivalent, the Copa Sudamericana, last Tuesday. Could have played if necessary, but he didn't. And he would turn up with Brazil. They met on Wednesday in the hills outside Rio, ready to train, ready to be selected for the game that they're playing tonight. Probably as this has been broadcast to the nation. We're speaking a couple of hours before their warm-up game against Panama. So that was a line from Santos. And then when he joined up with Brazil, Brazil had a look at him and thought, this doesn't look very good. And so off he went to a clinic, which was closed just for him,
Of
All
course.
the doctors had to sign secrecy agreements. It's just madness. And what came out of that is that he has a muscle tear. He has a muscle problem. Now, someone hasn't been entirely truthful here, because what was his real? Did Santos admit the truth? Were they economical with the truth when they said it was just a swelling? Did Carlo Ancelotti really know the depth of the problem? Would he have called Neymar up had he known the depth of the problem? This question was put to Carlo Ancelotti on Saturday, and he responded by saying, if my grandfather had wheels, he'd be a car, which got a laugh. But
it's got
really
two now.
Yeah, but really doesn't clear up the question in hand at all, does it? So we really don't know. And what Ancelotti said at the time of the call-up was, and he was a bit embarrassed about it, and having left out João Pedro for Neymar, and he kind of confessed, that Neymar's form and physical fitness at that point left something to be desired. But he said he's got a few more weeks to improve his physical condition by the time the World Cup starts. He no longer has those weeks. Those weeks will now be spent recovering. But what he can hope for now is to get fit enough to be where he was 3 weeks ago. So this is looking increasingly bizarre. It looks like, and this was the position of the Brazilian doctor, that he's touch and go and possibly not going to be right for Brazil's debut game against Morocco. That he might have a chance of the second game against Haiti, but they want him for the knockout stages. Now, all of this, it contradicts everything that Ancelotti has been saying during the build-up. He's been saying explicitly, I'm not going to take any passengers. Everyone's got to be 100% fit. And he keeps digging himself deeper, breaking the rules for Neymar. Now, posterity will be the judge of whether this is worth it or not.
That's the interesting thing, Tim, isn't it? Because if, let's say, for the sake of argument, they get through to a quarter-final against whoever it happens to be, and it's 1-1 going into extra time, he comes on, threads through this wonderful pass that takes out 3 people, and somebody puts home the winner, and does that alone justify his selection? If he was to have one magic moment along the way, does that justify his selection?
Well, given the fact that you can take 26, I think it probably does. And I think that's probably Ancelotti's thinking. 2 things we know about him. One, that he's an extremely political gentleman. You don't survive under Berlusconi and Florentino Perez without that.
Make the president happy, as he always says. Exactly. And
but the other thing we know about him is that he thinks as a player and as a kind of good, solid, but unexceptional midfielder who has an absolute reverence for talent. And it seems to me that he has a reverence for the talent of Neymar, and he's taking into consideration that, with the possible exception now of João Pedro, the others in the Brazil squad are happy to cut Neymar a little bit of slack. Yes, that would be the response. And I have to say that the form that I was watching, because I watched nearly every game he's played this year, and he just looks nowhere near. On the other hand, one lesson that we all learn as we go through life and World Cups, Kev, is don't write off quality.
Yes.
And I was one of those who at one point thought that the great original Ronaldo would never play football again. And how wonderful it was to be proved so emphatically wrong during the 2002 World Cup. So I think Ancelotti is weighing this all up and thinking that this is a gamble worth taking. But it always looked like, even when he was called up on the 18th of May, it looked like an act of faith. That faith has now grown. It is more an act of faith now than it is then. But the line is, they are not going to cut him from the squad. They have until the eve of the last of their opening game, so they have until June the 12th. If at that point, then maybe. But for the moment, they're not even thinking of cutting him from the squad.
Some of the other big hitters have named their squads: Argentina, Colombia and Uruguay. One of the things really caught my eye, Tim, Luis Suarez, not part of that Uruguay squad, even though he had made himself available.
Yeah, well, he retired from international football 2 years ago. And then it was a bit tentative, but he did say yes I couldn't say no to my country. And centre forward has become a bit of a problem because Bielsa obviously is really not happy with Darwin Núñez going to Saudi, and then even less happy with him not getting a game in Saudi.
Yeah, that's the risk. We've seen that with a few players now, haven't we?
Yes. And I think he's head and shoulders the best. Aguirre is a battler. Viñas is a promise, but not yet a reality at this level. But he's decided to keep faith with those three centre forwards. So no space for Luis Suarez. There aren't many surprises. There's one big one to me, I think, which is Nández not getting in, Nahiran Nández, who has been a fixture in the squad, who will do you right back and right side of the midfield, and is a tigerish, sometimes over a tigerish little player. He's been left out. But apart from that, it is the Bielsa boys, and maybe there'll be an element of relief in the camp, because one thing is certain about Uruguay going into this World Cup, and that's that Bielsa is not going to be the coach the other side. So this will be the last chapter in what has been a very difficult relationship.
And with Argentina, the big question, as you've said on a number of occasions, would Messi be part of it? And we've got the answer.
Yes, the confirmation that we always knew we were going to get. It's an extraordinary squad in some ways, Argentina's, because in qualification, everyone who started more than one game has been picked. So it's not a squad, I think, over which the coach Scaloni had to lose any sleep whatsoever. It's pretty
Nothing
much
left field.
Yeah. It's the Qatar squad. And there's 17 of the Qatar squad, plus Lo Celso and Nico Gonzalez, who would have been in the Qatar squad, but without Juan Foyt, who would have been in this squad had he not been injured. So it's pretty much exactly the same squad. Some of the old timers have been eased out. The only one reluctantly is Angel Di Maria, who is out because he wants to be out and would be in had he said at the 11th hour, "Can I come back?" He would have been in. The newcomers, the one that interests me most is probably Valentin Barco, because I think he might be a wild card off the bench. Variety of roles, running at defences. There's a lot of hope as well in Nico Paz. So far, Argentina haven't got much out of him, and I wonder if his time is going to come after the World Cup, because I think the problem that he's been having with Argentina is that he's another player who wants the ball to feet. And obviously Messi wants the ball to feet. So around Messi, and this going back to Barcelona many years ago, this is one of the big reasons that Felipe Coutinho couldn't possibly succeed in the front line.
Yeah.
When he joined Barcelona of the aging Messi and Suarez. And what the last thing they needed was another player who wanted the ball to feet. They wanted a flyer who could have the ball in front of him, and Coutinho wasn't that. It's one of the reasons I think that move could never work.
Yeah, he never had been that either, had he? It was quite a head scratcher, wasn't it, really?
Yes, it was. And he couldn't be Iniesta either, which was the other thing that they tried him as. He's not really a midfielder. It was a very, very strange move all round. But getting back to Nico Paz, maybe it will happen for him off the bench, because I think this is going to be a World Cup. Extreme heat, tiring opponents, moments I think will be important. So maybe he'll get his glory in little moments during the World Cup. If not, I think he's going to be a key player for them after the World Cup in the post-Messi era.
Anything raise an eyebrow with Colombia?
No, not so much. It is, it's the team that they've had together for years now, really. And their problem is that the last game that they played was considerably the worst one. They peaked 2 years ago. They haven't been quite... it's tough, Kev, to play two strikers and a 10.
Yeah.
Especially if that 10 is James Rodriguez, who at the veteran stage, who doesn't get a game anywhere in club football that he plays. But even though they peaked 2 years ago, all of their defeats had been single goal defeats. And then in the last game, the end of March, they come up against the France reserves, who just passed through them with an ease. And so that it just put a torpedo through the game plan of two strikers and a 10. when you come up against a side who could move the ball as well as the French reserves could be. It was 3-1 in the end, with Colombia getting a consolation goal, but really the difference between the sides was 6 or 7. And that was their last game, but it's too late to change course now. So Colombia, a little bit like Uruguay, are going to have to find it during the course of the World Cup, I think. And this World Cup does give you the chance to do that.
There is, isn't it? You've got It's not necessarily going to be how you start; it's going to be how you finish, isn't it? Because some of the teams that peak really early won't be able to maintain it, I guess. Just to finish with, Tim, group phase is over in the Libertadores.
Yes. So the knockout games have already been drawn. We have in the knockout phase. This has been absolutely dominated by Brazil, with a little bit of Argentina, and the last 16, 6 from Brazil, 4 from Argentina. So
it's England in the Champions League all over again.
It is. Yeah, it's England in the Champions League without a PSG and a Bayern Munich. And who else we got? We got a couple from Ecuador, the clubs have consistently punched above their weight recently. We've got 2 from Chile. Now, that hasn't happened for years and years and years. Whether this is just a flash in the pan or this points to better times to come for Chile, I'm not really sure. We will find out. 1 each from Colombia and from Paraguay. And looking at the first knockout round, there's one that just leaps out. It's an all Brazilian one. It's Cruzeiro against Flamengo. No, they're 2 absolute giants, and one of them is of course the reigning champions. It's so lopsided that there's going to be some surprises going through. Platense of Argentina, opening first campaign in their life against Coquimbo of Chile. I think it's their second campaign, but they're Chilean champions for the first time. One of those sides is going to be in the quarterfinals. So along with the big hitters, there is room for a little bit of romance, a few surprises as well. And that is going to help people through. We all know it. We all know it's going to come. The post-World Cup depression.
Yes.
The knockout stage of the Libertadores start early in August, so just time to wash that World Cup right out of your hair, and then you've got the Libertadores in the business phase to look forward to.
Tim, always a joy and an education. Tim will be enjoying that Brazil game. You are listening to Trans Europe Express.
David is an Arsenal fan. He's written the next big Arsenal song to rival North London forever. Good morning, David. How are you?
Good morning, David. Let's talk about the right side of North London now, people. Championes, championes.
Tell us about the song that you've written. Can you give us a blast on air?
Oh, I'd love to. So it's called "We're Going All the Way" by my artist named Guna Gonna Sing. So if you're finding out, have a listen, blast out. And there's a little bit of an intro with a bit of commentary from the end of the Atletico Madrid Arsenal game, and then it goes into it like this. Are you ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
Unfortunately, we're ready.
Okay, here we go. We're going all the way. The champions of England say Arsenal.
Arsenal.
Rewriting history, unbeaten every game we played. Arsenal.
Arsenal.
Mikel Arteta is our man. The Gunners going on for victory. North London is redder than ever. We're making history.
Oh.
You'll see, but we're going all the way. The champions of England say Arsenal.
Arsenal.
And there you go. You get the drift?
David.
When are you on top of the pops, mate? Deary me.
Listen.
You're listening to Trans Europe Express with Kevin Hatchard and Andy Brassell. It has been a truly extraordinary season at Real Madrid, and that's why it's time for this.
Mbappé. Sa carrière, le Paris Saint-Germain, Mbappé.
Little give and go. Mbappe's in. Oh, it's 2-2. He scored twice in 2 minutes.
Tête de Kylian Mbappé. Allez, Kylian.
Yes, it's time for Mbappe Watch. And Andy, there's so much that's gone on at Real Madrid this season. I mean, this could be the whole show, quite frankly. But let's bring it to the present day first before we review the season. Just explain to us why the presidential election at Real Madrid that's going to be unfolding in the next few days, why that's going to have an impact on the timing of Jose Mourinho's move to Real Madrid.
Well, the presidential election is on the 7th of June, Kev. Now, look, there is a second candidate, which is pretty remarkable, really. Florentino Perez has had the gloves off, it is fair to say, in the build-up to the election, and that's with us still having more than a week to go to it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next little while with that. He has been, can we say smearing? Certainly saying some stuff about his opponent. It's pointless. He's going to win anyway.
Well, exactly. I mean, he's out
I
of practice, though, isn't he? Because usually it's Florentino Perez against Florentino Perez. I mean, it's, you know, there isn't usually a different candidate. But this is something he started. It's something he called for. He called that really weird press conference where he indulged in a bit of casual sexism and said all manner of weird things. And then suddenly we had a presidential election on our hands.
Yeah, when you said that weird press conference, I mean, there have been a few recently. The visit to the Mercy Dash to El Chiringuito as well, home of dramatic music and lighting on Spanish television. So, look, it has been a strange little while. And, of course, because he's been so keen to get Jose Mourinho over the line, I guess the election has sort of made him miss the fact that Mourinho actually could have been got for €7 million. They missed the deadline to sign him before the end of the clause. So now they're having to pay €15 million. Now, that may seem like small beer to Real Madrid, but look, if I was a voter, I'd be sitting there thinking, that's not very on the ball, is it?
No.
So obviously we're waiting for really the election to happen. So then Mourinho, who he's still not talking about, well, not explicitly, can be formally appointed as new Real Madrid coach.
So we know it's going to be Jose Mourinho returning to the Bernabeu. Let's hear from the former Real Madrid midfielder Jeremy, because he's not only played for Real Madrid, so he knows the club incredibly well, but he played for Mourinho at Chelsea. He's been talking to talkSPORT's Ian Abrahams about whether Kylian Mbappe and Jose Mourinho are going to get along.
For sure. I think he will know. He will find the way to, he'll find the way to go on with Mbappe, because Mbappe is a big player. And every manager would love to work with big players. Now, it's not just work with them, but also, like you said, get on with him. And he needs to find a solution. Otherwise, it will be a very big problem.
Yeah, Jeremy there on what's going to happen between Jose Mourinho and Kylian Mbappe. Now, I guess, Andy, what we should say is that for the last couple of seasons since Mbappe's got there, he's scored goal after goal after goal. His numbers are phenomenal. Nobody doubts that. He was one of the big cheerleaders for Xabi Alonso, largely because he was a beneficiary. He was the star of that team. So unlike Vinicius Jr. and Fede Valverde, he was very pro Xabi Alonso, it seems. But the truth is, since he's got there, he hasn't won anything.
No, they've not really come that close either. I think that's the concerning thing from a Real Madrid perspective. Now, when you hear Florentino Perez explaining why he wants to appoint Jose Mourinho, I mean, he was going all retro and saying, oh, he made us incredibly competitive And it's like, right, that is the limit of the ambition, really, to be truly competitive now. I just wonder if the clue is in that, really.
Because that should be a given, right? That's the whole point.
It should be, but they're so far off being that. And I think both Real Madrid and Kylian Mbappe need to examine this relationship to see if it really is working. Look, I know it'd be incredibly complicated to sell him. Maybe even more so if he has a great World Cup and France win it, because then they attach an unrealistic value to him, which maybe they hold anyway. I mean, I tend to think that because it would reflect so badly on Florentino Perez, for that reason, they can't really get rid of him. But they should consider it, and he should consider it as well. 28 in December. And if it's going nowhere for both of them, look, it can't last a third season without winning anything. And look, Jose Mourinho, much as his great copy, is not a winner of leagues anymore. He's just not.
No, it hasn't been the case for a long time, has it? And you look at...
No.
I mean, we'll talk about Benfica a little bit later, but he hasn't pulled up any trees there. He failed with Fenerbahce and was moaning from the moment he got there about all kinds of subjects. And
yeah, I mean, look, Kev, the fact that he doesn't win the league at Spurs and Roma, fair enough. You can't pin that one on him. But Fenerbahce, who've got, a lot of money, and then Benfica, who likewise, it's just no excuse, really, is there?
But also what he failed to do at Roma in 3 years, i.e. qualify for the Champions League, Gianpiero Gasparini's done in 1. So, that reflects poorly on him as well, I think. But talking of coaches, if we look back at Real Madrid's season, it started with Xabi Alonso. It was supposed to be the new era. It was supposed to be this idea that somehow Xabi Alonso was going to bring in this meritocracy and it was going to be top-down approach. There were going to be a collective. It was all going to work really well. And they just kind of gave up on it a few months in when the players went straight to Florentino Perez and said, we don't really like this. We don't want to do what this guy wants us to do.
Well, really, they didn't even need to do that, did they? The moment that the club didn't come down on Vinicius after the strop he threw and after the apology he made to everyone but Xabi Alonso in El Clasico in October. And I never tire of reminding people of this. This was a game that Real Madrid won, by the way. They beat Barcelona in El Clasico. And Vinicius managed to make it all about him, really. Now, look, I think I have a bit of sympathy for Vinicius, who's been booed for most of this season by his own fans, which is not a pleasant thing to have to go through. I think the way that they've handled him, firstly with going mad over him not getting the Ballon d'Or, secondly through his contract, which they've still not sorted out.
It's only got a year left.
Yeah, well, that doesn't really matter when it's Real Madrid, does it?
That's true.
We've seen them in this position before. But I think thirdly, the way that they've let this sort of doubt creep into his mind and his ego since Kylian Mbappe's arrived. The question was never really about, it's a total false flag, will they fit on the pitch? The right coach can work that out and the players can work that out. But I just think, in terms of working out, like what they should have worked out, how it would change Vinicius and how he felt, because he goes from being the guy who is his team to all of a sudden this other big guy turns up. I mean, yeah, it's not great.
Big question marks over Real Madrid. Coming up after the break, we're going to review the La Liga season, and we're going to tell you how Barcelona's new signing, Anthony Gordon, has managed to progress beyond dos cervezas, por favor. You're listening to Trans-Europe Express.
Joey is on the line now. Joey, you're an Arsenal fan. Good morning. How's things?
Good morning, Joe.
Morning, and no good morning to you, Gabi Abonlaho. You've been doing my head in since Saturday, the 17th of August 2013. And that was the season I got my season ticket. You came into that game, you mesmerized our defense. We lost 3-1. I got home and my wife asked me, "Oh wow, Gabi Abonlaho has done this to you." And every time I have a bad day out there and I get home, the first thing my wife asked me is Gabi be doing your head in? Gabi, you're doing my head in, and
I don't mean...
You've turned yourself to become the big ambassador of anti-Arsenal. Like, you just go after Arsenal. You go after Arsenal every single day. Gabi, for goodness sake. This morning we're talking about Gordon. You went all the British press, tried bringing down British players. And then, in the same minute, you are saying you don't want Arsenal to win the Champions League. Gabi, that is a conflict of contradiction. You haven't an apparent bias against Arsenal. And you've been doing my head in since 2013, Gabi.
Joe,
For goodness
listen.
sake, let me have a break.
I don't...
Get ready to get the ultimate football fan winning feeling with talkSPORT Win.
Time is running out. This Monday at 4 p.m, someone wins the trip to the 2026 FIFA World Cup, courtesy of Adidas, and it could be you. You and a mate could be in Dallas on June the 17th, seeing England against Croatia live. We're talking flights, hotel, spending money, tickets, and the official Trionda match ball, all included. Head to talksportwin.com to enter and for full T's and C's now. Okay, it's time to look back on the La Liga season. We've just talked about Real Madrid extensively in Mbappe watch, but let's switch across to the other giant of La Liga, Barcelona. Andy, they've made a pretty sizable signing in Anthony Gordon. Before we get into how that's going to work and where he's going to fit and what that means for Marcus Rashford, many of us thought that Anthony Gordon's smattering of Spanish and just pinch of Catalan at his unveiling, very, very impressive. You're not so sure.
Look, it wasn't exactly Trent in the trophy room at the Bernabeu, was it? You know, he actually had a full speech in Spanish, which was really impressive. It never ceases to amaze me. And fair play to Anthony Gordon for taking the ball by the horns and doing his best to ingratiate himself with the locals. I thought it was respectful. I thought it was nice. But him knocking out 3 sentences of Spanish that my kids could manage and us treating him like he's a brain surgeon, I find extraordinary, to be honest.
Andy's kids are really clever, to be fair. He's setting a high bar.
Look, my point is, if I can do it, anyone can do it. That's really my point. I think that the fit is really interesting. Look, I think we've seen with Scott McTominay a huge part of a British player going abroad, which, you know, something that they've not done that frequently down the years, and even less so since the best wages are in the Premier League. But we're seeing a bit of a change in that in the last couple of years. Excuse me. And like we saw with Scott McTominay, embrace it from day one. Look like you want to be there from day one. Go to them rather than let them come to you. I think that's a huge part of it. And so Anthony Gordon is clearly hell-bent on making this a great success. It's something that is clearly a move that all 3 parties selling club, buying club, and player are happy with. I've got to be honest, I'm not 100% sold on him. And I've seen a lot of him in the flesh. Not that means my opinion counts more than anyone else's, but I just think if you're looking at someone, and I can understand all the reasons that would recommend him to Barcelona, his energy, his pressing, the fact that he's learnt to play the centre forward role a little bit better, so maybe you could play in that. The fact that, and we'll come to it in a bit, Julian Alvarez is likely to be preventatively expensive for Barcelona, I think is another thing. But I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Kev, how does he get into that team ahead of Rafinha or Lamine Yamal? Unless you've got long-term fitness concerns over Rafinha.
So I go back to, the idea I spoke about with Bayern. If you've got a Champions League final tomorrow, Anthony Gordon doesn't start if everybody's fit. But I guess what he does do is he covers Lamine Yamal if you want to rest him against Levante at home. He covers Rafinha if Rafinha has an injury, as he has done several times this season. And he probably covers a little bit through the middle for whoever the centre forward happens to be. So
my question, Kev, is if that's the case, why don't you stick with Marcus Rashford, who can already do that job? Really well, who's fine with that role. I know people will say about the wages, but he took a big cut to play at Barcelona this year, and he obviously really wanted to stay there. So the idea that Barcelona would be picking up his Manchester United wages is like patently false.
Yes, my suspicion, and I agree with you, I was surprised. I found this a real eyebrow raiser. What I actually thought was happening was I thought that this was a hurry up to Rashford to lower his wage demands even further and for Manchester United to bring down the level of the clause. That's what I thought this was initially. And then when they actually pushed it through for that level of cash, I was quite surprised. I guess the only thing here tactically is that Gordon will do more without the ball than Rashford will. He just will. That he's just capable of that. He's an excellent presser of the ball. And the truth is, that's what Hansi Flick has built this team upon. They keep saying that it's not the case and that they're about much more than that, but they're a pressing machine that plays super high line, and there comes a point where everybody needs to contribute to that if they can, and I think he will do more without the ball than Rashford will. But I agree with you. I think it was something of a surprise. I suppose it's important to kind of tell people who aren't aware about this one-to-one thing that Barcelona have. Now, what I mean by that is Barcelona for the last few years have been labouring under this very strict salary control under the La Liga rules, and they've had to pull these financial levers. They've had to do all these things to get back to where they need to be, to a situation where you have one-to-one. And what that means is the money that you save through wages or the money that you save through sales, you can then put straight into signing players, giving players wages, whatever. And that seems to be the case, Andy. I know there's still a couple of technical hoops to jump through, but if they're taking a swing at Julian Alvarez, which it seems as though they are, they must be back in that one-to-one situation, mustn't they?
Well, I haven't been here before.
Am I being very naive here? Well, but La Liga won't stand for it, though. I mean, they could splurge a load of money on Julian Alvarez, but if you can't register him, what's the point? So they must feel that they're there, surely.
Well, it's kind of the thing with the Gordon signing. Like, he's nice to have. There's no doubt about that. And, I think if you're looking at it from Gordon's perspective and probably Hansi Flick's perspective as well, they both back themselves for him to be a better player in a year's time, let alone 2 or 3 years' time, because Hansi Flick is a brilliant improver of players. There's no question about that. And he gets something out of players that even they didn't suspect was in there before. We've coined it on here. He's the Bielsa that wins trophies, isn't he? But the issue is, and obviously we'll get onto Atletico Madrid through this, the way that Barcelona have pursued it. Look, Atletico Madrid's position is clear, and it's always been clear. The fact is, he's got a long contract, which runs to 2030. He probably wouldn't get as much wages at Barcelona, but we'll come to that in a second. He's got a buyout clause, Julian Alvarez, of 500 million euros. And Atletico's quite reasonable position, I think, has been through the way the club has briefed. Look, if someone wants to put 150 million on the table, maybe we'll talk. Now, Barcelona's position, and I don't know, they're not the only club who've ever done this, of course, not the only big club who've ever done this, is to sort of get certain influential social media accounts and certain influential writers to go, oh, Julian Alvarez wants to come, it's just a matter of time. Why is it a matter of time if they probably can't put half of that money on the table?
Yeah, and Atletico have probably reasonably responded and had a bit of a go at Barcelona. Well, yeah, I suppose that the idea of responding is reasonable. The way they've done it smacks of the intern going wild with the passwords, doesn't it?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. So, like yesterday, they did a mock-up, firstly of Lamine Yamal in an Atletico shirt, yes. Secondly with Pedri, and thirdly with Rafinha. Example: the text on the Yamal one said, "Dear Barcelona," obviously tagging them in on the socials. We're going to offer you 4 tickets to Bad Bunny at the Metropolitano, because of course Bad Bunny's playing a run of 12 gigs at the Metropolitano this week, and a bag of a subscription to ABC, the newspaper, and a bag of pipas, which is the sunflower seeds that people eat at the football there. Please confirm with us so we can prepare the presentation. And anyway, they carried on, and eventually they had this quite long tweet that said, look, this may seem like a joke, but it's not really a joke, because the fact is, Barcelona have used these channels to try and destabilise our player when they're not serious. They're not serious about putting the money on the table. And I have sympathy with that. Obviously, they then went on to say, of course, this is a club that had the vice president of the Referees Association on their payroll and pulled in political favours to register their players.
Yeah, that took it a bit far beyond, didn't it, really?
It's not even June yet. Like, have a deep breath. Save some of this for the middle of July. But
yeah, it's going to be a long summer.
It is. It is. I don't see how they can make the deal happen. Also, the other thing that we have to say is PSG have shown an interest in Julian Alvarez, and they do actually have the money.
Oh boy, they do. So Barcelona back-to-back champions, and rightly so. By far the best team in Spain. Hansi Flick has signed a new contract, so it looks as though everything's going well there. We await the financial helter-skelter that's bound to come in the next couple of months. Andy, who's your star of the season in La Liga?
You know what? It's a bit of a late one, but I've gone for Carlos Espí, the Levante attacker.
Yes.
I think because 20 years old, relatively little first-team experience, but he got himself 11 goals in 13 starts that steered Levante, who looked absolutely doomed a couple of months before the end of the season, away from relegation. He can do it all. Left foot, right foot. He's fast. He's good in the air. He defends from the front as well. And 10 of those 11 goals came from March onwards, which is pretty amazing, I think.
If you were truly talking about MVP, he would win it in La Liga, because
by him, not Julian Alvarez.
Yeah, he would absolutely. Yeah,
he'd press from the front, for goodness sakes.
Yes, you probably could get him some Bad Bunny tickets. I'm sorry, Levante, but maybe that is the case. My star of the season, hands down, Marcelino, the coach of Villarreal, who they've now actually parted company with because they're bringing in Inigo Perez. More on him later. But Marcelino just did a phenomenal job. Villarreal finished third, played some great football, and they have qualified once again for the Champions League. Plenty more still to come on Trans-Europe Express.
Now, one of the most important parts of the interview, you must be happy. It's been 22 years since your beloved Arsenal lifted the Premier League title. Finally, it's come back home. I mean, how are you feeling?
It is fantastic, and this squad is really, really good. They've had real resilience. I do genuinely think they're the best team in the Premier League this year. I'm really glad to see them win it, and hats off to them, because they did really well. The pressure was then really on with 5 or 6 games to go. Suddenly it looked like starting the title race all over again. They pulled through, and they've done brilliantly. And 22 years is a long time to wait.
It is a long time.
But we've done it.
Let's hope you have to wait a bit longer. I'm not an Arsenal fan. I have to get your views before we let you go on the pressure that you put on TNT Sports to make that final 3 on Saturday. I just want to get your views on that. I know you're going to echo that, but of course TNT price it at what, $4.99, which some could argue is really good value. So what's your view on that?
I just think it should be free. It's always been free, every year up to this year. And I say this not as an Arsenal fan. All fans want to watch the Champions League final. It's a big event. It should be free. And that's why I wrote to them to say, please make it free. I'll renew that, actually. I really do think they should do that. I think it's the right thing to do. And look, I mean, it could be a fantastic topping off of the week. We had Villa. We had Palace.
You're listening to Trans-Europe Express, and we're going to look back on the season in Italy now. And Andy, Inter were clearly the best team in the country. They won the league, they won the Coppa Italia, and Christian Chivu, considering it was his first season in charge and he doesn't have that much senior coaching experience, did an incredible job.
He did. I mean, obviously the sacking of Arne Slot has made me think, I wonder what that second season is going to be like, really. Especially as they'll be expected to make more of a fist of it in the Champions League this time, because that was what was really missing. But I think when you look at what Chivu inherited, a team that lost out on the treble by right at the end of last season, that look old, tired, grouchy, demoralised, had to go to the Club World Cup and he had to deal with that as well. To make them look fresh and to actually quite interestingly change them, because we've always thought of them as based on really good defence. They scored a ton of goals this season. Almost 1.5 times anyone else in the league. I think the nearest other was Como at 65, and they got 89. That's an enormous difference. They were really, really good to watch. And when you think that they missed Denzel Dumfries for a bit, they missed Hakan Çalhanoğlu for a bit. I don't know what you think, Kev, but if they can sell Çalhanoğlu to Galatasaray or to Fenerbahce in the summer, do it. I reckon, because honestly, I think they can develop without him. They want to get continuously younger. But I think there are a lot of question marks over next season. Obviously, he deserves to get that go. But as they continue to get a little bit younger, I think it'll be really interesting to see what he's able to make them into.
Yeah, I think Sucic is an excellent player. Zielinski, I thought, had some really big moments as well. I think they've got some quality in that midfield area. I'm a massive Çalhanoğlu fan, so I'd keep him forever if it was me, if I was the coach. If I was Beppe
Run that
Marotta.
asset into the ground.
Yeah, he signs on until 2035. He's not going anywhere.
That's not your money, is it?
No, absolutely not. So I could say what I want. With Inter, I think you're right. I think that defeat to Werder Glimt in the Champions League, it wasn't just the fact they crashed out the Champions League. It's who they went out to and how they went out, because over the 2 legs, Werder were the better team by quite some distance.
Yeah, well, it's all about detail in the Champions League, isn't it? And I thought they were quite careless. I think really they could have ended up in the top 2, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Really. Well, maybe not the top 2, because I don't think they would have finished above Arsenal or Bayern. But they could have finished in the top 3 or 4. And some of the games they lost in the league phase, they were just nodding off, really. And you kind of got that really sense in those 2 games against Bodo Glimt. Whereas you said they had the chances to win both games and they didn't do it. So that will be the question for Kivu in this coming season. And I guess the question is where they go from here. I mean, it looks like they might very well get Curtis Jones, who I think would be a terrific signing for them personally.
Yeah.
That sort of versatility that's really valued at Inter, and the fact that, you know, you spoke about Zielinski there and Çalhanoğlu, both great players, but both in their 30s now. It's the next part of the team that needs to get a little bit younger, isn't it?
Napoli qualified for the Champions League with room to spare, couldn't quite maintain the title challenge, and I think injury's a big part of that. Ongisa was out, De Bruyne was out, Lukaku was out. They had so many players missing big chunks of the season. Antonio Conte is gone, and Andy, Kevin De Bruyne is pretty happy about that.
Yeah, and people say the Dutch are the most frank people in Europe. And there's
You
Kevin
hop
De Bruyne.
over the border and look what you find.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realise I was that side of the border. De Bruyne really firing shots at Conte over this weekend, saying he was really pleased that he left. Now, I don't know if anyone's told him who the new coach is likely to be. Max Allegri, having been binned by Milan, looks as
rightly.
Exactly. Looks as if he will be in charge at Napoli next. Napoli fans not delighted with that, especially with Vincenzo Italiano available as well. I mean,
it's bonkers. Andy, it's bonkers. Why would you? So Italiano, I think, is a really progressive coach who just needs better players who can really take off. This is a guy that has got pretty mediocre teams to win things, to get to finals, to progress beyond what you would expect them to do. Allegri, you can't take aim at his overall record, but as we're going to discuss in a moment, I mean, the way Milan completely collapsed and didn't even make the Champions League, the fact that Napoli are going to hire him, it just makes Serie A look ridiculous. I
don't use the word inexcusable, but I think I might have to use it in this slot because realistically, like they started the season very well. They looked very, very well drilled. They weren't conceding any goals at all. But the way they fell apart on the stretch, I mean, they didn't even have the excuse of playing European games. I just don't understand.
Completely unacceptable, really.
Yeah, it's so poor. It's so poor. And really, his football looked really outmoded during that time. Of course, there was that image that's going to stick with us throughout the season of him calling Cesc Fabregas a child on the touchline. And, you know, if they'd have been on Twitter, I think Fabregas would have replied with one of those little fishing emojis.
Yes.
Because it was a sense of, you know, baton being passed, really. You know, like you can't keep up with me, old man. Some of that, really. So I can understand why the fans are so annoyed. But yeah, De Bruyne and his view on it. I mean, I don't think he'll be there next season anyway, and that will probably be the same with Ongisa, as you mentioned before. Probably be the same with Lukaku. So there will be a mini revolution, I think, whether they like it or not. But they have to be very careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because everything that they've done over the past 5 years has been really good.
Yeah.
And, you know, the way they recovered from that poor title defence the season before last and came back and won the title last season, you know, that made Conte worth it on his own. But, yeah, they've got to be careful, I think.
Yeah, Milan have pretty much thrown everybody out. So Allegri's gone. Ilitare, the sporting director's gone. The chief exec has gone as well. So big changes there.
What happened there, Kev? Was like Zlatan Ibrahimovic in the toilet while they sacked everyone because he survived?
He hid under a table, or like did a Southampton and got behind the bush because he must have managed to do something. Time for our stars of the season, Andy. Daniel Marlin's mine because he fired Roma into the Champions League spots. They and Como qualified against all odds, I guess. Marlon got 14 goals in 18 Serie A matches after joining in January from Aston Villa. So he did a wonderful job. And you've got about 40 seconds to tell me yours.
Well, good, because it's pretty shameful. I'm going to choose someone from the same team. I'm going to go for Stefan El Shaarawy because he didn't really get a mention last week. With his last kick for Roma, he's leaving the club, of course, this summer. Very much loved there. Scored the goal that saw them through to the Champions League against Verona. So delighted for him. Roma legend.
Wonderful stuff. I mean, do you know what? I'm going to cheat here and I'm going to chuck in Nico Paz because I feel bad for Como.
Yes.
We're going to chuck another one in there because he was absolutely phenomenal for Como. The fact that they've been able to qualify for the Champions League is really quite remarkable. I know they're well funded. I know that, you know, they've got really good backing. They've got really good coach in Cesc Fabregas. But for them to qualify for the Champions League is way ahead of schedule, and
Amazing.
well done to them. We have raced through the first 2 hours of Trans-Europe Express. We've still got lots of good, wholesome content to come.
Andy Robertson and Liverpool and the memories that brings up and the incredible teams that you've been part of over those years and Jurgen Klopp, all that history. Oh my goodness, just sum up, now that you're at the end of your Liverpool career, how it's been, how emotional has this been for you?
Yeah, it's been a difficult couple of weeks, but I also try to enjoy every minute of it. I think people are fed up of seeing my face and seeing interviews of me doing farewell stuff, so I'm glad this one's radio. But yeah, look, it's been an unbelievable 9-year journey.
Andy, can I take you back to, because I honestly think this was probably one of my favourite Liverpool sides ever. Mane, Salah, Firmino, Henderson, Fabinho, Wijnaldum. You guys, that back four, you just picked yourself really, Robbo, Matip, Virgil van Dijk, Trent and Alisson. It will forever be one of my favourite Liverpool sides, I think, just because there was so much character in it, but also you guys were just so good. What was it like having that connection that you had with your team?
Yeah, look, that was, I think, I've spoke about it, quite a few times, but it's like that was the best time.
More green jackets have been lost at the 12th than at the Augusta City Dry Cleaners. Rory McIlroy knows this better than most. But what is Amen Corner and why is it so iconic? The famous sequence has always been there since the Masters began in 1934. It didn't get its name until '58, though, when American sports writer Herbert Warren Wind, on the left, wrote, "At the farthest reach of the Augusta National Course, down in the Amen Corner." He drew inspiration from the 1933 jazz song Shouting in That Amen Corner by the Dorsey Brothers. The reason behind its difficulty is all in the sand and the water. Tournament officials don't even bother to count the balls lost in there each year, such is the sheer number. The 11th, named White Dogwood, is a downhill 520-yard par 4 with a pond to the left of the green and a bunker to the right. Both cause a lot of trouble each year. The 12th, Golden Bell, is perhaps the most famous hole in the world, with danger everywhere. Many aim for the flag, but look, get it even slightly wrong, and you're in the azaleas at the back, or the bunkers at the front, or even worse, Rays Creek. Or you can play it safe and aim for the open green on the left. You chicken. Tiger Woods once said, if you make 4 bogeys from Thursday to Sunday, you're doing well. And the highest ever score on that hole? 13. It's a par 3. Tom Weiskopf in 1980 was the sorry soul. Often the iconic Ben Hogan Bridge is the only thing players enjoy about Golden Bell. Even if you escape there unscathed, though, you met with Azalea, the dogleg par 5 13th. It tempts players to go for the green in 2, but cut over those trees on the left at your peril. Every year, it seems, Amen Corner destroys someone's dreams. Rory McIlroy dropped 3 shots through here as his round unravelled in 2011. In 2016, a year after navigating Amen Corner expertly, Jordan Spieth shot a quadruple bogey on the 12th to throw away his green jacket. I mean, it sounds like my game, to be honest. So who'll be the next to be brought to their knees, praying for mercy after Amen Corner?
You're listening to Danny Kelly's Trans-Europe Express. I'm Kevin Hatchard, sitting in for Danny tonight with European football super brain Andy Brassell alongside me. In the final hour, we'll look at arguably the biggest night in Crystal Palace's history. We'll examine the Netherlands' chances at the World Cup. We'll go around the leagues and we'll bring you a special interview from Polish football. It's all coming up on Trans-Europe Express. Big thank you to all of our listeners. We never take your attendance for granted. Andy, we're going to look at Crystal Palace's win in the Conference League final. They edged out Rayo Vallecano in Leipzig. Just a phenomenal night for Palace. Phenomenal night for Oliver Glasner. What a way for him to go out. And what really struck me about this in general, this season under Glasner, was that in football, patience is in short supply. And people make big calls probably too hastily on a regular basis. Palace have done the opposite. When Glasner was speaking quite openly, as he always does, as he always has done, about transfer matters and the fact he felt that him and his players have been completely abandoned by the club bosses because of decisions they'd made in the transfer market, they stuck with him. Even after he'd said, I'm going to leave at the end of this season, they stuck with him. Even when they had a really sticky spell mid-season and the fans were starting to get a bit restless, they stuck with him. And not only that, when Jean-Philippe Mateta tried to leave the club in January and his move to Milan fell through because of his knee injury, a lot of clubs would have sidelined him. And it would have been really difficult to build those bridges between him and the fans. But they were able to show patience and he scores in the final. So I think it really reflected well on Steve Parish, and I think it really reflected well on Palace as a club that they've shown that level of foresight and patience.
I totally agree with you, and I saw you point that out on socials during the week, Kevin. I couldn't agree more. I think you put it perfectly. The only thing I would say, it's easier to do that at a club like Palace than it is to, say, a club like Chelsea, for example, but where there's this
there's no patience there.
No, but where there's this demand for action, where it's a massive story, when it all happened with Glasner, especially that level of frankness. If you're Chelsea coach, like the club can't have to sack you, really, don't they? And there were people out there saying that the club have to sack Glasner, but yeah, you're right. They did well, and other clubs would do well to learn from it, to take a breath, really, and just let everyone calm down for a second. Yeah. And I think a huge part of it, and we've seen it with, of course, the fact that some bigger clubs, with all due respect to Palace, are interested in Andoni Iraola. It will be tough to get a coach as good as Oliver Glasner again next, you know. And you know, they're really glad. Obviously, they did what they did. I think there has to
Are
be
they
an
glad all
understanding
over?
Yeah, something like that. I
I'm
think
so
you have
sorry.
to kind of don't apologise. Never apologise. Never explain. I just think that there's got to be a recognition of where you are in the food chain.
Yeah.
You know, the reality that you have to sell players like Mark Gay. You have to sell Eza. It's just part of it, really. But I don't think it's wrong, on the other hand, for fans to demand full commitment while you're there. It's just about being a bit savvy and actually saying the right things. It's fine to want to leave, but to talk about it all the time is maybe not that fine. And Mateta is interesting, I think, because he's someone who I wouldn't think it's abnormal for him to feel that sense of urgency, because he was at Lyon before, it didn't work out. He was a reserve in the Bundesliga at one point, not for one of its biggest clubs.
If you'd have said to me when he was at Mainz, in and out the team, hat-trick one week, 10-match run without a goal the next, if you'd have said to me he'd be scoring in European finals and he'd be a player that Milan wanted in January, I'd have thought you'd lost it. Because the leap he has made, and Glasner deserves massive credit for this.
He does.
The leap he has made is phenomenal and very unexpected.
It is. And I think, but that makes the way that he's managed it and Palace have managed it even better, I think. Because if you're his age, it's not like he's 21 or 22. You must feel that sense of anxiety of, this is my big moment.
Yeah.
And if I don't take it, no disrespect to Palace, again, where he's had a brilliant time. And I think maybe in retrospect, he'll look back and say, oh, actually, that was pretty good that fell through. And, I'll get my move to Juventus or Milan or wherever else now. But I don't think it's abnormal for him to have a little bit of anxiety at that moment. And he's got over that as much as Palace and Glasner and Parish have got over it. But look, I think Palace, for me, felt like a really fitting winner of this. And I know everyone's wringing their hands over Premier League clubs, etc., dominating these competitions. But look, the reality is, when we're talking about the Conference League being created, to say it's not for Premier League teams, well, Premier League teams like Palace, Premier League teams like Palace, who
West Ham,
exactly, who don't expect to win stuff. And you ask West Ham or Palace fans, there'll be two of the greatest nights of their football supporting lives. And what I thought was brilliant about Palace, who'd never been in Europe before, just to reiterate, of course, everyone knows that, the fact that they kind of learned to play in Europe as they went along, you could see the working. And funnily enough, they found it easier in the knockout stage, where the other teams were more open, than at the beginning, when you had far inferior teams to Fiorentina and Rayo and Shakhtar come to Selhurst Park and go, all right, then come on, break us down.
They
really struggled with that.
With Cups. They lost at home to Larnaca.
Yeah.
These were inauspicious beginnings, but they managed to see it through and get the win. We talked about this final last week, and we said that we felt it would be a lot more competitive. We felt Palace would win, but we felt that Rayo were going to put up a really good fight, and that's what happened. I guess the thing with Rayo and their outgoing coach, Inigo Perez, says it's a match that he will never watch again because it's too painful. The truth is they didn't have enough at the top end, did they?
No, they didn't. And look, you look at a player who they've got who's a Spanish international player, Jorge de Frutos, he's a really great player. He's the only one who has scored double figures in La Liga this season, and he's not even an out-and-out striker. So what does that leave you with? That leaves you with Alemão. That leaves you with leaves you with
Izzy Palason, who kind of floated around, but didn't really make an impact.
Yeah, I think it was difficult for EC, I think, in terms of the physical side of it. Because really, for me, I think that's where you saw the Premier League difference. In that first 20 minutes of the second half, when Palace just monstered Rayo on a physical level. And I think in the week where we've had so much discussion about Arsenal and the way they played. I think really that was the same sort of thing in a different way, the same sort of qualities in a different way that won Palace this game. Because, people were asking, like, why didn't anyone close down Adam Wharton? Well, all right, try and stay with him then. It's just not possible, is it? You're talking about a guy in Adam Wharton, and this is the difference, just like it was the difference when, Lucas Paquetá created the winner for Jared Bowen in the Conference League final going back a couple of years. The fact is, you've got a big guy who can step up at a big moment. And Adam Wharton, he's been linked before with Real Madrid or Bayern. He wouldn't look out of place in either of those squads.
I fully agree with
there's no
that.
doubt. And he will end up at a really big team at some point. But look, I thought Rayo used the subs quite well. They played really well the first half, but you just wondered physically would they be able to stay with it. They looked as if they were flagging a little bit, I thought, at the end of the first half. And Glasner's so smart, he's obviously thought, right, let's crank it up a notch at the start of the second half, watch them try and stay with us. And they couldn't, really. And I guess the only surprise was that Palace couldn't quite finish it off in that 25-minute spell where they really went for it. But look, Rayo's journey is extraordinary. When you consider the rudimentary facilities they've got, when you consider that the club's fans have been really in open warfare with the president, Raul Martin Presas, for years now. And I think for them, it's not just the journey of going on the way and these brilliant moments that they've experienced. I think it's the fact that they can turn around to the rest of the world and go, actually, you weren't paying any attention to us before because you only care about Real Madrid and Barcelona and Atletico. And actually, we're not mad. We actually are being gaslit by our president. And the rest of the world can see that now. And I think that's as important as the achievement for those supporters.
It's become a really big story, the fact that they don't always have hot water at the training ground. They don't have a workable pitch. They don't have online ticketing. They don't have they don't have a shop that's bigger than a broom cupboard.
That's the funny thing, isn't it, Kev? How that's been talked about as if it's some sort of charming, like oldie worldy thing.
It's a disgrace, is what it is.
It's disgraceful, exactly.
There's a hygiene aspect because there's rats there. I mean, you name it. So it's something that needs serious action, and you'd hope there'll be some kind of groundswell against Pressa. I mean, there already is. I mean, he couldn't have too many more people against him, but that's the way it's heading, and hopefully that something good will come out of it in that regard. Just want to finish this section just talking about the Conference League in general, and maybe the Europa League a little bit, in the sense that there is a section of fans, certainly online, maybe in general, who will say things like, oh, we want to see big teams, we want to see clubs drop down from the Champions League to play in the Europa League and what have you. What irritates me about that, and it really does, is that everybody gets so obsessed with the destination and they completely forget about the journey. Yes, Freiburg got absolutely hammered by Villa in the final of the Europa League, but that is just the end. You say to those Freiburg fans, do you want to swap all those nights you had in Europe, all those amazing moments, how you felt when we got through to the final, we're getting that comeback against Braga? They wouldn't swap it for the world. Absolutely would not.
This who deserves to play who gatekeeping is just nonsense.
Yeah,
really, isn't it? You do need that variety.
Infuriates me.
You do, totally, and you do need that variety in modern European football. For what it's worth, I thought this was a very, very satisfying Conference League because we had some great stories in it. We had two great finalists, and the atmosphere was unbelievable. You know, if you can think of the amount of football matches where, and I watched it at home, having gone to Istanbul for the Europa League final, where the atmosphere actually flies out of the telly at you. It's quite unusual, that. And it was, you had some like life-changing moments, some great moments between the fans of the two clubs, which is what it's about. And it was never a foregone conclusion that Palace were going to win the competition going back to the beginning, unlike Chelsea, which the season before, which is a bit of an anomaly. But look, if you look at some of the teams that are involved next year, Kev, so Brighton, who've got relatively little experience in European competition as well, Atalanta are in the Conference League, Getafe, I mean, I wouldn't say don't go out of your way to watch any of their matches. Freiburg, Monaco, Ajax, Braga, Europa League semi-finalists this year. Başakşehir, Motherwell played great football. Panathinaikos, previous European Cup finalists, of course. Austria Vienna, Copenhagen. You've got some really interesting clubs in there.
It's going to be great. There's less violence in the Running Man than there is in the average Getafe game. So that just gives you an idea of what you might be dealing with. Coming up after the break on Trans-Europe Express, we're going to take a look at the Netherlands' chances of winning the World Cup.
Edwin, away from Soccer Aid, obviously a good second half of the season for your former club, Manchester United. It feels like a no-brainer to give Michael Carrick the job on a full-time basis. I guess the big question is, what can he achieve next season? How close to being championship contenders do you see them being?
Yeah, but I think what Michael brought was stability, clarity. Got some players in, played a lot of times the same team, and formation that was recognizable for the fans. And I think the performance that he put on, the results that he got, and that the board and the directors take their time to look at our options, see how things develop, see how the players look like. Probably they got some contact with Bruno and some established players to make up their mind. And very happy for Michael that he got the opportunity to do it on a permanent basis.
What about Michael Carrick's big selections this summer? What has he got to do in order to make them more competitive next season in terms of winning the Premier League? Because that's the established aim for Manchester United.
Yeah, of course. I'm not that deep into Manchester United. And of course, some players will have a desire to leave or to extend the contract.
The latest episode of the How to Win the World Cup podcast is now available. Matt Ford and comedian Susie McCabe speak to former USA keeper Brad Friedel all about penalties and the pressure of a World Cup penalty shootout ahead of this summer's tournament. That's the How to Win the World Cup podcast, available right now on the talkSPORT app or your favourite podcast provider. So it's time to take a look at the Netherlands' chances of winning the World Cup. We've been having these team focuses on some of the big European hitters in the last few weeks. We are going to take a look at the Dutch under Ronald Koeman. And Andy, I guess Koeman's a good place to start because he's somebody that was in charge of the team, went to Barcelona because he couldn't resist the lure of his old club. That didn't work out for him. He's ended up back in this role with the Netherlands. What's really struck me about the squads is the fact that he's lent towards guys he knows rather than maybe guys who are a bit more talented, but a bit more of an unknown quantity.
Yeah, I mean, I feel a bit reticent about sort of propping this squarely at Ronald Koeman because, let's be honest, most international coaches are relatively conservative.
Yes, that's true.
They have their guys and they're not too swayed by performances during club football. I guess the exception, which proves the rule, certainly in the Netherlands squad, is, say, Jeremy Frimpong, who had a difficult first season at Liverpool and has paid for it. I guess from their perspective, because they've got Denzel Dumfries anyway, it's quite an easy to stomach sort of loss, I suppose, out of that squad.
And he's never fancied him as a defender either, Andy, has he? He's spoken quite publicly about the fact he doesn't think he's very good defensively.
No, I don't think he massively fits with, like, he would have fitted into Louis van Gaal's team in 2014 really well, but I just, the traditional Dutch shape he doesn't fit into brilliantly, which I think is quite interesting. But really, I guess the thing that everyone zeroed in on with Koeman is when he was explaining his choices in the press conference in Amsterdam. He was asked, like, why did you call Wout Weghorst and not say a guy who scored like double figures in the Premier League this season? And he went, "Who's that?"
He was getting excited, thinking, "Who's this striker that I've missed?"
Yeah. He starts Googling. And it would have taken him a while to find Zion Fleming, I think. But yeah, I guess the fact that Zion Fleming, who's had a good season, by the way,
for a poor team, he's done really well, hasn't he?
He has, but the fact that he's being mentioned by journalists, I think, shows a bit of concern about where they're actually at and the sort of depth of quality they have. Now, look, I think if you go back a couple of years, the main question about the Netherlands was where are the next reign of great Dutch coaches? And I guess Koeman is part of that, really, isn't he? The fact that he's got invited back to the job after a couple of difficult times, and he left the Netherlands in the lurch a little bit before when he took the Barcelona job, but he's been invited back because I don't know, Louis van Gaal was unwell and was not available.
Yeah.
Really. It's not a great advert for where they are at the moment. But in terms of the squad, I think as well, Danny talked passionately for a long time on Trans Europe Express about how, like, if you attach the Netherlands defence to most other teams, you got yourself most other good teams, you got yourself a World Cup winner, which I think is a really interesting point and probably correct. But then you look at the performances this season of some of those defenders, and you think, is that still the case?
Yeah, I look at somebody like Virgil van Dijk, for example, and I think he's had to take a hell of a lot onto his shoulders. He's had to play pretty much every minute for Liverpool with Leone injured, with Joe Gomez often injured. They've pretty much been down to two centre-backs. Not only has he had to play all of the games, he's had to front up constantly to explain poor performance after poor performance. I mean, there are big reasons for that, which we won't go into now. But, it's been quite draining physically and mentally, I would think, for him. He's getting towards the end of his career. I mean, I don't want to speak for him, but I mean, that's clear from his age. And he is a linchpin, isn't he? And I think that does have an impact. You mentioned Dumfries. He's missed most of the season with injury.
Yeah, I think that's a huge problem for a load of these guys. And it is the problem when you pick off reputation, isn't it, as well? I mean, look, Justin Kluivert hasn't had his best season either for Bournemouth. It's been tough for him. Tijani Reinders had a great start at Manchester City and has really faded from being a regular. Teun Koopmeiners has had a difficult time at Juventus as well, because it's been tough for them.
Gakpo, he's another one. I don't think he's played well for Liverpool.
How many of these players are you hanging your hat on? We're back talking about Daniele Malen again, aren't we?
Yeah.
Like the only thing that I would say to Ronald Koeman, not that he particularly needs my advice, but the only thing I would say to Ronald Koeman, just play Malen at centre forward.
Yeah, because
figure itself out, won't it?
Do you know, that actually is a really good point, because what we know about Daniele Malen is that he's a streaky player, right? And when he's on a hot streak, you've just got to keep picking him. And this is a much longer hot streak than he usually produces, but we've seen it before. The issue with Dortmund always was he never lasted for that long, and it would usually be followed by a run of 7-8 games without a goal.
Yeah,
whereas
I think if
at
you
Roma,
look at
all he's done is score.
Exactly. And it's because he's got a coach who totally believes in him and says, look, you're my main guy up front. just interpret it as you will. And you see the quality of the runs that he makes, and obviously how good he feels about himself. You can see that in the finishing, I think. At Villa and Dortmund, he was played wide far too often, and he's always been quite insistent that I'm not that sort of player.
Yes.
Now sometimes you know what it's like with players; they can't really see their own best qualities and they can't get out of their own way. But in the case of Daniel Marlon, well, he's right, isn't he?
Well, he's not a one-on-one guy. He's a run-in behind guy, isn't he? He's that explosive pace to get in behind and then finish. He's not really going to dribble past like 2-3 players. It just doesn't really happen that way for him.
No, I agree. And look, I think the Netherlands are going to have to start this tournament well. If you look at their games against Japan, Sweden, Tunisia, okay, look, in this new format, it's going to be really hard to go out in the first round if you're anywhere approaching good, I think. But those aren't that easy. No. I would say there's enough in there. And look, we saw with Sweden in the playoffs that they don't have to play well to beat you. You know, they've got enough forward quality. And, you know, we're presuming Isak comes back to some sort of form. You've got Gyökeres. Elanga has been brilliant for the national team recently, and he had a better end to the season with Newcastle. And actually, when they had that front three of, I know I'm going a bit off piece there, but when they had that front three of Elanga, Nugren, and Gyökeres, worked really well.
Yes.
And the look on Graham Potter's face when they're qualified wasn't just joy. It was like, I can't believe we've qualified with the way we've played in these two games.
Yeah,
exactly. But that's the difference with good forward players. And I think that's one of the concerns for the Netherlands. If Marlon doesn't do it, I don't think anyone will do it for him.
You mentioned about Dutch coaches and the fact that we don't have a lot of them really excelling at the top level. I mean, you think of somebody like Mark van Bommel, who was seen as a bit of a rising star at one stage, and that's all fallen apart completely for him to a certain extent. But I wonder as well about Ajax are having a really rough time.
Yeah.
PSV, I know, have done really well under Peter Bosz, but they haven't made as big an impact in the Champions League. And, you know, Feyenoord hit and miss. And I do wonder if, I know a lot of Dutch players do play abroad, but I just wonder, that general malaise in Dutch football feels significant to me.
Yeah, I think you got a point there. I thought you originally I thought your point was going to be Peter Bosz should be the national team coach. Look,
that'd be so much fun.
That'd
be amazing.
I don't think Virgil van Dijk is here for it. I mean, he'd need a segue in a Peter Bosz team, wouldn't he?
He would.
But look, I
rocket
think
pack.
Yeah, it would be really interesting, I think, to see that happen, because I reckon Peter Bosz is so Cruyffian that I think if you were to say, like, you know, Ronald Koeman's, like, you know, got a leak in his flat, you're going to have to coach the Netherlands at the World Cup this summer, I think he'd go back to the drawing board and pick quite a different squad. It'd be interesting, wouldn't it, to see the sort of squad that he picked?
Yeah, because, again, there are some, as we said, this is what we started it with, wasn't it, really? There are some talented guys who haven't been picked, and maybe it's not quite their time yet, but I do wonder if they do struggle, whether they'll look back and think they maybe made a few poor choices. Plenty still to come, by the way, in the final hour of Trans-Europe Express. And coming up, we're going to hear from Tan Kessler, who is the CEO of the Polish club Pogoń Szczecin. All coming up on Trans-Europe Express.
as I've been waiting to come on, I've just had a message from somebody called Gabriel Agbonlahor. I'm not quite sure who he is, but his message was replying to me writing a diary in the Spectator magazine this week, which is headline, "No one likes Arsenal, we don't care." And he's just said, "I pray for a PSG win." Think about that sentence. That is a talkSPORT presenter on his knees praying to God that Arsenal an English team, do not win the Champions League. That is how pathetic the Arsenal haters have got. It is pathetic.
I want to ask you about that, Pierre, and I'm deadly serious, right? I'm deadly serious, right? I remember West Ham getting that Conference League final. Just about the whole country was behind them. Certainly Palace last week. Everybody was behind them. Why? What is it with Arsenal?
I just cannot understand how any fan base that has me, Keir Starmer, Jeremy Corbyn, the president of Rwanda,
you've answered that,
and I haven't finished yet, and the late Osama bin Laden. Why that fan base would be so detested, I have no idea. No, you know what it is? It's we live in a country I like this about our country, but it's full pop.
Get ready to get the ultimate football fan winning feeling with talkSPORT Win.
This Monday at 4 p.m, someone is winning the trip of a lifetime to the 2026 FIFA World Cup in Dallas. talkSPORT and Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier, are sending you and a mate to see England's opening game against Croatia on June the 17th. We're talking return flights, accommodation, spending money, tickets, and the official Adidas match ball, the Trionda, all covered. So if you're ready to get that winning feeling, here's how to enter. For your chance to win, head to talksportwin.com or text WIN to 83338. Text and online entries cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate, or call 0343 418 7260. Entries must be in by 4 p.m. Monday. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a talkSPORT promotion. Full T's and C's at talksportwin.com. So for your chance to win, text WIN to 83338 now. Now, we've got a bit of a treat for you now on Trans-Europe Express. It's not every day that we get to speak to the CEO of a top-flight European club, but earlier today, Andy spoke to Tan Kessler, the CEO of the Polish Ekstraklasa club, Pogoń Szczecin, and he talked about a whole range of subjects with Tan, and the first question was to ask about how crazy the Ekstraklasa season was for him and his club.
I guess I'd like to start with how has the Ekstraklasa season been for you? Not just in terms of Pogoń, but in terms of the development of the Ekstraklasa.
No, thank you for Andy for giving me opportunity on a lovely Sunday from Poland. Actually, it's been quite challenging and very tough season, and certainly unique. I would have to admit because. I had never been in a season where almost 12 teams competed for the European spot and for the title, and at the same time possible relegation. So it was extremely tight, and it was teams are very equally balanced, and that's the beauty of Ekstraklasa, I think, because of the business model and how Poland is approaching for the football. And the desire and the fan base is extremely supportive. So everybody is number one sport is football in Poland is without a doubt. And I think we put on a very good show, not only just Pogoń, but at the same time the entire Ekstraklasa teams. there was till last 3 weeks undefined title holder, and till the last week and even last minutes, there wasn't. We still wouldn't know who would be relegating and who would be competing for the European competition. In fact, our game against GKS Katowice was quite the example of it. We drew the game 1-1, and we were leading the game 1-0 till the 90th minute, and we would probably finish 7th place, and GKS Katowice would finish 6th place, and a point away from qualifying for European competition. In fact, with a freak accident, our goalkeeper cleared the ball out of the box, and they had obviously quite big advantage because our goalkeeper got sent off. For them it was a Cinderella story, and so we had to put our striker back in the goal, and we couldn't keep the lead for another 7 minutes, and GKS ended up going to European competition. And imagine the biggest team in one of the biggest teams in Ekstraklasa, which is Legia Warsaw, and could not qualify to European competition. That's how competitive and to the last minute it was this Ekstraklasa year for us. For Pogoń, I think it's just it was a transitional year. We had our very tough moments fighting for relegation battle at some point. And we had our moments actually in five weeks into the league, finishing the league with a European competition chance. And again, we played against Cracovia, and the 90-plus minute again, we had conceded a goal, and then they tied the game 2-2. It was 2-1. Had it ended 2-1, probably we would be the fifth spot for going to European competition.
So how is this received by the people like yourself, I guess, who are in the boardrooms? Because we're always hearing, Tan, that big business likes certainty. But in terms of football, fans like the opposite, don't they? You know, I think we look at European football, a lot of the major leagues, and see that the same teams win again and again and again, or maybe it's a 1-2 horse race for a title. Whereas you talked about how close it was in the Ekstraklasa. You have an old traditional name like Górnik Zabrze, who've not won for absolutely ages. They win the cup, which is their first trophy for 30 years, something like that, as the Lucas Podolski is coming to the end of his career. So how do you meet really the gap between what the owners and the board members of the clubs would like and what really whets the appetites of the fans?
To be honest with you, it became extremely well received because not only British fans picked on it, British media picked on it, the competitive balance and the challenge of Ekstraklasa. Then also like a lot of publications picked up in US, in Turkey, and many other European countries. I know towards the end of the season, La Liga became very competitive in the points. Yes. And so, but from the beginning till all the way to the end, I think Ekstraklasa was the only league that kind of delivered that thrill of equal balance of competition. So from our ownership perspective, it was very stressful. Managing the weekly games, not unlike championship for me, for example. Yeah, you have to go again. Saturdays, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday. So you have to keep going. But when you have Saturday, Sunday games, a loss or relegation becomes very pressured and stressful. And also in the same sense, trying to qualify for European competition within the same sense is also interesting feeling emotions that we had to go through. We did really try to keep our sanity, and we believe our process. The owner as well, Alex, he had also experienced something very unique as well. So it was quite challenging from the ownership perspective because your investment and you know, for us, we've taken over the club a year ago, and we had cleared up significant debts and took the club out of to kind of a safe harbor in financials. And while we're putting together a team, a very, very interesting team, meaning very offensive minded, very entertaining football, but we had to keep our also a balance within the reality of Polish football, extra-class football, because it's very physical, very transitional, and very unpredictable in a way. So it was more transitional for us, but we believed in the process. We stuck together, and we kind of made sure the team stuck together, and we had a good coach, and we had good players, a lot of potential players. Therefore, it was more like an eye-opening, but at the same time, we became team, and we became one unit after all these transitions. So it was a significant experience, Andy, for me. I never thought I would go through this, but after going through this, it gives me a quite good feeling and confidence, looking forward for the next season and fighting for European competition or a title that we never had.
And how much more of a big deal is it for Polish clubs to qualify for Europe now, Tan? Because I guess we look at the Conference League, which is now 5 years in, and it's clear that it has opened up Europe for a lot of different leagues that really didn't have that perspective before. I mean, Shakhtar Donetsk, who after the Russian invasion started playing the European home games in Poland, and now after going to Germany, they've come back to Poland. I spoke to some of the people around Legia Warsaw when they were hosting the games in that first season in 2022-23, and they were saying to me, this makes us want to be in Europe, organising these European games. But how important is it, the prospect of qualifying for Europe, when you know that you're not just cannon fodder for Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, but you're in a tournament where you can actually be competitive, and obviously those coefficient points are very, very useful for the status of Poland?
It's significantly important. I'll come back to you from the club perspective, then the league perspective. And as far as the PZPN, the Polish FA perspective, in different 3 stages. From the club perspective, it's extremely important because although Poland and Ekstraklasa is one of the highly regarded leagues in Eastern Europe, if not one of the top 3, and it's improving in the European leagues stage. Also, as you may know, we have a strong content provider, which is Canal Plus, and our league is going through again another tender for distribution rights, TV distribution rights. So there are a lot of American ownership are interested. I mean, American content providers are interested. So it was quite significant for our clubs to be in European competition stage. In the case of Conference League, in the case of Europa League, obviously Champions League is still far away. There's a significant budget and financials and squad quality difference, but it's slowly building up. So from the club perspective, it's almost 20-30% of our budget is projected based on qualifying. Along with the creative player sales, players trading, but still, Ekstraklasa's TV income revenues for clubs are more or less 50-60%. Then we have very strong attendance base, and I know you know this because, for example, as Pogon, we average almost 18,000, 80% capacity full during the season regularly, and in total of Ekstraklasa, it's like 65% capacity, so 15,000 attendance average for teams that are in 8,000 stadium capacity. So our stadium is more or less 22,000, but from the perspective, the certain fixed revenues are there, but still the qualifying for European competition is more or less 25 to 30% of our projections. So it's quite significant that we have to qualify, and coefficient points are always very important. And this year, obviously, Lech, Gornik, Jagiellonia, Rako, and GKS, they qualified. And I wish them all the best, and Lucas done an amazing job with Gornik, and hopefully they can qualify to Europa League. And their success affects us. So in that sense, in the European stage, we all support each other and want all of our teams to be successful rather than being rivals in many other leagues. From the league's perspective, it's very important because there's a strong business model in here, and Extra Classa, which I'm on the board of it and following closely. The attractiveness of this league is based on European qualifications. So the league regards this highly as well. And unfortunately, Poland couldn't qualify for World Cup in the final state of playoffs. But there's a strong foundation that while seeing the club football being in the European stage, can improve and will improve the success of the league and the clubs.
That's fantastic, Tan. Unfortunately, we're stuck for time, so I'm going to have to leave it here. I've got so many other things I wanted to ask you.
I'll try to be as brief as possible.
But yeah, this is the format, I suppose, and this is it. Look, it was great to catch up with you. Thank you so much.
Tan Kessler there, the CEO of the Polish top flight club. Pog on a fascinating interview there with Andy. Coming up on Trans Europe Express, we're going to go around the leagues.
Big week.
Come on.
Big week.
Can I get congratulations?
Happy for you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Do you know how pathetic this is? You got a Tottenham fan sort of celebrating. You can't celebrate. You come in
straight in. Bro, at least like maybe a cup of tea first. Bro, straight in.
No, mate, because your entire gait and approach is wrong. This is unjust. This isn't how it works. Darren sitting next to me, giving it the big one, is just about fair enough. They're champions. They can get away with it. You can't come in here as a Tottenham fan and celebrate. You've got to celebrate.
You're smiling. Where did you finish?
What did you celebrate?
Where did you finish?
I'm not celebrating.
Where did you finish?
No, we finished mid-table.
I'll put something to you. We had the same season as you.
I kind of agree with that. I just think it's crazy that you came in here. You came in here like the cat that got the cream.
No.
This is the thing.
I think what people are confused about. No one celebrated finishing 17th. We celebrated the fact that we're not going to be in a championship. You don't get that. What don't you get about that? No one wants to be 17th, but once we're in a relegation fight, you want me to be upset that we're staying up, bro? I'm happy, bro.
I think it's shameful that you can find anything to celebrate at the moment. And this is the thing that Tottenham fans are doing. They're sort of going, we kind of won. We won. We succeeded. We made it. Like, no, you lost. The fact that we're having this conversation. We're having this conversation. He's coming in for a different level of smoke.
Yeah, he has.
I had an ice cream earlier.
He has. No, literally, I was enjoying the weather. Yeah, he's coming in on war
honestly,
crazy.
I just can't believe it. I've witnessed you in real life. You've walked through the door like the cat.
You want me to come in here? It's 30 degrees outside. How do you want me to walk in?
I think you should come in here very reticent and basically say,
Can't believe that we've nearly reached the end of another episode of Trans-Europe Express. The last 3 hours have absolutely flown by, but we are going to go around the leagues now. And Andy, let's start in Portugal, because we'll look back on what was a really interesting season, because you had Porto crowned as champions. Francesco Farioli did a brilliant job there. You had Sporting, who finished second, and Jose Mourinho, who came in partway through the season for Benfica, managed to go through the entire season unbeaten in the league and finished third.
Yeah, they did. Obviously, it's been something of a theme of Mourinho's recent years, not really daring to win the big games. That was certainly a criticism at Fenerbahce. And then you look at the first points that Porto dropped this season, especially notable in their record point total for the first half of the season under Farioli, which did him a brilliant job and got him a contract extension 8 months into the job. And Benfica went to the Dragao in the Clásico, drew 0-0, and Mourinho said, well, it would have been nice to win, but I was more bothered about not losing, to be honest. And I was like, well,
that's it. That's the line.
I could have told you that, to be honest. So I don't know. Obviously, at this stage in his career, look, he's had a brilliant career. It's not really going to change anyone's view of him, I don't think. But I thought it was interesting to see Porto with arguably a younger, handsomer, more modern version of Mourinho actually getting it done despite an inferior budget.
Yeah, and supported by Andre Villas-Boas, the president of Porto now, and of course who once supported Mourinho in a much more junior role. Turkey, really interesting. We had a good old dust up in the title race, but Galatasaray so strong. And there's a bit of chat about Victor Osimhen's future at Galatasaray.
Yeah, mainly thanks to the Nigeria national team coach, Eric Chell, who talked about Lookman not being with them at the moment because he was nursing a minor injury, and Osimhen because he might be changing clubs. Just drop that into the middle of a press
Thanks,
conference.
Eric. Yeah.
And so, obviously, everyone around the world goes crazy. Victor Osimhen is not looking to leave Galatasaray. They're not looking to sell him. I saw him linked with Roma today. He looks like exactly the sort of man who would love a 70% pay cut. And that's if Roma are pushing the boat out. The other thing that rather undermines that, but basically someone in around the Nigeria team has said it was just a miscommunication. He's still on holiday. We know that because he went to watch Kanye West in Istanbul last night.
Oh, yeah, of course, if you prefer. Fenerbahce. I love presidential races in Turkey because what you end up with is people just throwing all kinds of names into the pot. I'll sign this player. Yeah, I'll sign an all-star team if I get the job. And with Fenerbahce, we've had Rafa Leao, who says he's leaving Milan. We've had Mason Greenwood, Robert Lewandowski, Tom Cruise maybe, Idris Elba, who knows, who might be turning up at Fenerbahce. How realistic is any of this?
Well, yeah, Domenico Tedesco has popped on the boat over the Bosphorus, and he's likely to be pitching up in Serie A at Bologna instead next season, which will be amusing for everyone, of course, because
apart from Bologna fans.
Yeah, his name literally means Dominic the German in Italian, so that will be quite exciting for everyone. But yeah, I mean, look, we've no idea what it will turn out like at Fenerbahce. They did so much right last season. Again, started in a couple of the big games, conceded a lot of like ruinous late goals, really, and of course ended up getting a hiding in the second Istanbul derby. Narrowly escaped defeat in the first Intercontinental derby against Galatasaray. But look, I think there's a lot of players who will have Fenerbahce as an option now. There's no doubt about it, because when there's a new president, as you say, they want to make eye-catching signings. That they went out there and they got on board players who I don't think would have been available to Turkish football, Turkish domestic football a couple of years ago. You know, you look at not just Milan Skriniar, Marco Asensio, who had a good season as well because he received superior salary offers to what he would have in the Premier League, which is remarkable, really. But I suspect it'll be the same all over again. And look, we can have absolutely no idea what the Fenerbahce team will look like next season. But I think what's particularly interesting, Kev, is the fact that they got through the second half of last season without really a proper centre forward, because Talisca's more of an attacking midfielder.
Yeah.
And they played Kerem Aktürkoğlu in that more central role, where he actually played pretty well, and I'm sure he could do well for Turkey there in the World Cup. But they'll be splashing big on a striker, which I think will be a big story when we get into August.
I don't think it's likely to be Lewandowski, though, but we'll see where we go with that. Peter Bosz has won the league again in the Netherlands with PSV, and they're the best team in the Netherlands by quite a distance. That's largely because Ajax are not very good, Andy.
Yeah, they're pretty terrible. The fact that they had to go through that playoff to get themselves even into the Conference League. But normally when you see a big name in the Conference League, you think, oh, well, they're a contender for it. I don't know about you. I'm not feeling that Ajax are a contender for the Conference League as stands at the moment. No. Not this Ajax team. If there's an overhaul, maybe we've got something interesting. So much depends on the new coach. I think that is a massive part of it. It won't be Oscar Garcia. He'll go back to the B team, to young Ajax, because he didn't really manage to turn it around, Jordi Cruyff's mate. But look, I think Peter Bosz deserves an enormous amount of credit. But as with so many of these leagues we're talking about, the fact is that it's really hard to say when they're teams that will lose a couple of big players each between now and the start of next season.
Yeah, it's difficult to know where they're at, isn't it, really? I mentioned Rafa Leão. I should just mention him just very quickly, Andy. Could he make it in the Premier League? Because he'll be linked with a move to England, won't he? And he is leaving Milan.
He's been so unbelievably inconsistent since he won the Serie A MVP. I think it's difficult to... Look, he's got all the talent to be one of the best players in the world, but he's just not, is he? And he's not young anymore either. I think the fact that Milan had that €175 million buyout clause for him, and that they are said to be willing to more than halve that, says everything. I think they might struggle to get that for him, to be honest.
Yeah, I think